And after the meeting, if you want to put your
Like it
contact.
might just miss us. I hope it does.
I just realized I'm doing this today.
Special meetings, yeah. You got the thumbs up. I call the special meeting of Tiffin City Council on June 14th to order. This evening, the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by yours truly. So I'd ask all of you to please pray with me, please. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. In Jesus' name. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to ask Clerk Ann Forrest to please call the roll.
Councilwoman Boyle.
Here.
Councilman Gillig.
Here.
Councilwoman Yanatuno. Here. Councilman Jones.
Present.
Councilman Leopard.
Here.
Councilman Perkins.
Here.
And Councilman Perry.
Here. Let the record show that all 7 members of Congress, I'm watching too much TV. All 7 members of council were present. The purpose of our meeting this evening is to discuss Eduardo Hernando's riverfront project and land purchase and any other business that may come before council. Are there any petitions?
There are no petitions, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have no minutes to approve. Do any committee members have a report? Okay. Does anyone see a need for another committee of the whole meeting? I think we've got all those scheduled. We're good on that. I'll now go to reports of the officers. His Honor, Mayor Aaron D. Montz.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have Mr. Hernando here this evening to present, so I'm going to allow him to do this under the mayor's report because I know when we have public comment, you have a limit of, I forget if it's 3 or 5 minutes, and I don't think he can possibly get through his presentation in that time. So I'm going to turn over the floor to him. I do want to let you all know, at 5:30, I will have to leave. I agreed months ago to throw out the first pitch and to make a speech for the one of the baseball leagues here in town tonight. So if we do go past 5:30, I'm going to have to get up and exit. So, but with that, as you all,
Before you turn it over, before you turn it over to Eduardo.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as you all know, Mr. Hernando's contract with the city does expire at the end of June. He approached us seeking an extension, so he's here this evening to update a lot of you because I believe 5 of the 7 voting members of council were not on council when the original project was presented. Many of you were not even here when the previous extension was granted. So he's here to give an update to city council, solicit feedback from all of you, so that if we do indeed grant an extension, that we know what needs to be put into that agreement and what not to put into that agreement. I believe you all have a copy of the old contract, so hopefully you've all reviewed that. So Rich, I know you wanted to say something after that.
Yeah, before Eduardo makes his presentation, I thought, because going back to the mayor's comment, that 5 of the 7 members of council were not present the last time Eduardo did his presentation, and which led to the agreement that we have now. So I thought that it would be appropriate to have our law director kind of bring us up to speed on the agreement, some of the things within the agreement, some things for all of you to maybe have a better understanding. I know you've read through it, but okay.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Council members, you did receive a copy of the agreement and the addendum, but we're more than happy to give some highlights to that. The original agreement was dated October the 5th, 2018, and that was a result of lengthy negotiations and discussions with the developer. And the developer in the agreement is actually Tiffin Riverfront Development, LLC, of which Eduardo Hernando may be a principal of. But that's the entity that actually we entered into a legal agreement with. And that entity is an Ohio LLC. The agreement has several provisions that I think are important, and it may be discussed a bit this evening. First, it involves 2 parking lots. So this is, and they're not adjacent to each other. First is parking lot 6, and some adjacent property along the river that is back behind the Presbyterian Church. Goes all the way down to the river and then goes a little south along the river, all the property that the city owns off of Monroe Street there. It also involves Lot 4. Lot 4 is the property that is between, the city owns between Market Street and Perry Street, from the river all the way up to what formerly was the Prism Hotel property that the city acquired and tore that building down. The city obtained appraisals for that property. The purchase price then of in the agreement is the combined value of the appraisal of each property, because we do have distinct values that we determined for that property. The total value is $267,000. That's the purchase price in the agreement. Lot 6 in the adjacent property has a value of $145,000, and Lot 4 was appraised at $122,000. The agreement defines the project, because this is what council, the city discussed and wanted. The project is building, developing, and operating a hotel and condominium with restaurant and retail business. So that is what we bargained for, we want in terms of a project on city property. We also have dates in this agreement because we wanted, of course, to get the project accomplished for the benefit of the community. And the agreement had a commenced construction date of December 31st, 2020, and a complete construction date, December 31st, 2021. And those dates were put in the agreement as a part of post-closing obligations and restrictions, which means that it was anticipated that the closing, the sale of the property, would take place well before December 31st, 2020, so that they would allow for construction to start by that date. And it gave rights that the city would have to purchase the property back if that was not, if construction was not completed by that date, or started by that December 31st, 2020, or completed by December 31st, 2021. The agreement also has obligations of continued progress by the developer, so that there would be, we want to make sure there was communication, and that every 90 days there would be some advancement of the project towards the approval, development, entitlement, and construction of the project. So that is kind of high-level key points to the initial agreement. And some of those topics may be discussed this evening. Last year, there was an addendum that was entered into by the city and the developer, an addendum to that agreement based on a request from the developer. A year ago, naturally, we were in really the first part of the pandemic, and it was obvious that business was not as normal, and those dates that I mentioned could not be accomplished. And so there was a request to extend those dates, and they were extended for 6 months, meaning that construction was supposed to be commenced June 30th, 2021, and completed June 30th, 2022. And those dates are part of that addendum. In addition, there was a suspension of the continued progress because there was a time where communication and progress and activity for this really couldn't have been done. And there was a lot of unknowns during last year, obviously. That addendum was entered into on December 2nd, 2020. And so those are the two legal documents that the city entered into. We're now approaching the date of June 30th, 2021, at which time construction was supposed to be commenced under the agreement. Otherwise, we could purchase the property back. Well, it's not even closed because the project is moving at a different pace. And so I think that kind of leads us to the point where the developer has contacted the city administration, gave a presentation, and now, as we suggested to the developer, should come to council, because as you know, by charter, you are the body that approves any sale of real property. Ultimately, you make that decision. The administration can only hear and help negotiate and work with what the terms that you approve. So that's why the meeting is scheduled for today. And you may very well want to take action by the end of the month, so that if the agreement continues, it can be a part of, be an agreement that the dates will be relevant, because right now we're fast approaching the end of the month when construction was supposed to be started under the current terms. Are there any questions from council about the legal agreements that the city's entered into, including the addendum?
Councilman Jones?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. When you said appraisal, several appraisals, were you talking 2 or 3 or 5 or just?
No, I apologize if I misstated. There was a commercial appraisal for the property. There's one that I know of. And those were several years ago, before the agreement was entered into in 2018. So there's just one commercial appraisal, but they had distinct dollar amounts for each property. Any other questions?
Thanks, Brent. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, the law director did a very nice job of laying out the background for all of this, but I think the person that can probably lay out the most detail and answer questions that city council may have is the developer, Eduardo Hernando himself. So Eduardo, we're going to turn things over to you to make a presentation to council this evening, and then we will take discussion from there once you have completed.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Very much appreciate you giving me the time and the opportunity to speak with you this evening. It's nice to be back in Tiffin and back in front of you after just having Ohio open up just recently, and after all we've all gone through. It's been a big challenge for everybody personally and business-wise, and it's been a big impact, the COVID and the shutdowns. And so I wanted to bring you up to speed on the project, give you a lot of details that you may not know or you may not have heard because you weren't a part of the early presentations to get us to this point. You know, one of the things that has impacted this project timeline is the COVID shutdown. And I'll just address that quickly, and then I'll go back and kind of start through a process of what's gotten us to this point. I'm not sure if you're all aware, but we received the approval from the Board of Appeals in November of 2019. At that point, I immediately already had lined up the acquisition of the franchise for Choice Hotels, which would be like a Hilton or Marriott flag, and Choice Hotels provides the reservation systems. The reservation and loyalty program, like you would if you're a Marriott Rewards person or Hilton person, it drives business to a hotel. What the relevance of that is or the significance of that is when you're coming into a city or town, you go to your loyalty hotel first, and then if there's no hotel, you go to a secondary decision process. So I had already lined up the Choice flag the moment we got approval from the Board of Appeals for all the variances we needed for setbacks and heights and density, because all these things were required for the project actually to work and to fit within the parameters of the lots. Nothing could be done until that approval came. So it's really a critical path of one thing comes before the other, and that's, I'll get back to that so you understand more about what I mean. Choice Hotels was a great partner, and they're looking very, very much forward to having the hotel here. And so as soon as I got the appeal approval, I immediately purchased and closed on the Choice Hotel franchise December 31st, 2019. So the dates are relevant because at that point, we were obviously in Christmas time, holidays, and I happened to be in town meeting with the mayor and the team March 10th, 2020. I think it was March 15th, 2020, when COVID shut it, somewhere in that window of time when everything got shut down. So if in fact COVID had not happened, many things would have already been happening. One of the things that is relevant is a conversation with our local bank, who is actually now financing the construction of the condominium and the multifamily, which is just a third part of the project that has nothing to do with the city. They're financing that, and in fact, he stated, because he wanted to do the hotel as well, that's included in this project, I would have financed the hotel also, if not for the COVID shutdowns. So prior to March 2020, coming back to the city, meeting with the mayor and the team, okay, that particular meeting was specifically to start the next phase where we could have closed and we could have started construction by the dates that Brent displayed today. So we would have been on that time frame, if not for the situation that we're in. So what's relevant is I want to kind of go back and take you through what the process is. This is an absolutely huge project for any city, not just Tiffin, and for any developer, not just me. But there's different stages in a project of this size, and depending on what happens in each one of these stages is what allows you to go to the next stage. The very first one is the due diligence analysis stage, which when I first met David, Zach, and the mayor early on, you know, I just came back I was invited back to be on the board of advisors of Heidelberg University, which I'm an alumni of, and wanted to give back. And while in one of the annual meetings that David was speaking about the facade programs. Now, I haven't been back in many, many years, so I didn't really know what was going on in Tiffin. I just came back to the university. And all I kept hearing was, you know, job creation and facade programs and people renovating lofts downtown. And it was just really refreshing to hear all this stuff going on in Tiffin. And one of the things I mentioned to David was, wow, you know, it's really great you're having these situations, but man, you really need urbanization downtown to solidify the businesses, so that consistency and over year with restaurants. And he says, can I email you something? And he emails me the vision of Tiffin that the council voted on many years back, and it was the future of Tiffin. And in that future, it showed the lots on the river, and it showed all the different things that you had planned. And honestly, it was quite a surprise that a small town would have even invested $150,000, which is what it cost for that report to be created. And it was just surprising, commendable. It was admirable. I was like, wow, you know what? I mean, Tiffin's really interested in doing some great things. And basically, you were setting the GPS for the future, and you need that, not only for yourself, but for a community like this. You know, which direction do we want? What do we want the community to look like? And so it was very, very impressive to me. And that was the start of what triggered my curiosity about doing something in Tiffin. I didn't come here to do a project at all. I just came here to rejoin my alma mater and help out, and I could come back every quarter, and all of a sudden I'm looking at this as, wow, let me look deeper. And when that process started, it was countless meetings of coming up, evaluating the market, evaluating the real estate market, finding out the market has little to no inventory, or if it has a little bit of inventory, it's homes that need to be fully renovated or a lot of renovation. And then there's labor issues. You can't find people to do labor. So if you want to renovate, even if you want to renovate, it's another issue. And so these types of things that were happening in the community for me were what I saw opportunity. And so fast forward in the due diligence stage, and there's basically 4 stages in a process or in a procedure of getting a project finished. As far as my analysis, it might be 5, it might be 6 for some other group, but for me it's 4. And in my due diligence analysis stage, when I'm evaluating needs and evaluating the market and going through the discovery of this is a good project, it's not a good project, it's a medium project, am I even interested? You know, am I interested in spending time, money, et cetera? And I reached a point where my own evaluation was that the market was short about 250 homes between rentals and living, you know, condominium. And the project number is 174. That's where that number comes from. So I wanted to be under the 250 to have some room for any hiccups or any issues happening. And that's where the numbers, how the numbers have come up to define the project today. But at that point, I realized, you know what, this is a great opportunity. And I remember early on, I mean, people were very surprised that I found it to be a great opportunity. And so I said, and I've stuck to it to this day, as you can see. Tiffin became a home for me when I was here, when I was young. And so Tiffin emotionally was always a place that I could call home. I have tremendous relationships that go back decades, and I still do today. I have friends in Tiffin, true friends in Tiffin. And so it became more than just a project. It became, well, I can help out the community. I can make a difference in some way in this community. And so there was really more of a connection to, okay, how much money am I going to make? Which becomes less of an issue. You can never do anything for money. It has to be a why. The why is what fuels a project or fuels something you're doing for your family, or it's why. And that why, for me, really means a lot and still does. That's why I'm back here, and that's why after a year of COVID, I still haven't given up. And I haven't given up on Tiffin, and I haven't given up on this project. And so going back to that analysis stage, I came back to the mayor, I came back to David, and we created an agreement that at the time, and I'm not sure if you have the history of that property or these lots, you may over the next few weeks if you don't. These lots were not listed by any realtor. They were not. There was no other person trying to bid while I was bidding. I understand there was someone a few years earlier that was interested. That deal didn't go through. So these lots were basically dormant. Nobody was thinking about doing anything on the riverfront. And when I announced my project, I remember hearing from one person or a small group of people that, oh, this is too big for Tiffin. Tiffin, this is not for Tiffin. It's not ready for Tiffin. And so there was a little bit of a debate on whether this housing, the number 174, was too much for Tiffin to absorb. And so David, through TCEP, commissioned a housing study. I'm not sure if you ever heard this or read this report, but to my dismay, but not truly surprised, I thought maybe it's going to come in and 250, 300. The number was something like 440, 450 housing units needed. I want to address this specific point, and then I'll continue. This report is, I think, almost 2 years old at this stage. The demand and the pressures on housing don't just stop. It's not like a light switch, the demand continues to grow. Now add the situation with the COVID, where if I'm a student graduating from high school, I've got to go to Cleveland, or I've got to go to Columbus, or I've got to go to Detroit, or I've got to go to other parts of the country for a corporate job or an opportunity. Guess what? I can work remotely now. And now I can move back to Tiffin, a safe, amazing community. I can be close to my family, and I can still work for the corporate company. So that alone, that factor alone, and it's hard to measure at this point what that really means, but I can tell you from what I understand markets to be, that 450 is well short of where Tiffin is today, and will be, because everything is a moving target. Once we actually break ground and we're building, it's continuing to move. That number continues to grow. So, which is a great opportunity for Tiffin, in fact, to bring people back and to bring families back together. So just going back to the due diligence in the end, there's been some question, but now Tiffin can have 2 projects the size of my project. Going back to the point of Tiffin wasn't ready or this project was too big, you can see the numbers actually support 2 projects and maybe even in the future, much, much more than what we're bringing to the community now with this project. So anyways, just fast forward to the process of getting into the agreement, the appraisal of the properties. The city provided those appraisals to me. The city was comfortable with those prices based on an appraisal, and we moved forward in the project design and the project agreement. One of the main factors that the mayor and David wanted to make sure was I wasn't just coming in and sitting on an agreement, and then nothing happens, it's off the market, and nobody else is doing anything. And I said, look, I've done my due diligence in the past, and it was many, many months of meetings and time, to the point where I was able to make a commitment to Tiffin and to this project. And of course, you don't really know until the action supports the words, right? So of course, I knew that I made a commitment, because I don't make a commitment until it's something I believe in. And so you can understand why the language then, continued progress, was important to David and the mayor, and which I had no problem with because I knew what I was committed to do. And so continued progress has been consistent, and I think almost monthly since day one. The mayor and the team has had an email from me showing and displaying continued progress, even to this day. What happened with COVID was, like the old recorders, you had a little button, you press a pause. We had to press a pause button. So that's what continued progress is. And then David wanted some sort of completion date. Hey, we want to, if you close, you break ground, we want to at least have you kind of keep your feet to the fire. So these are what the dates and relevance of the points that Brent so clearly made for everyone to understand. And if you have questions about that, obviously, you can ask me a little bit further down. So we entered due diligence, we got the project, we got everything under contract. At that point, we enter the entitlement stage, which is the second stage. Now, the entitlement stage is where you're truly taking a project, a raw project, raw land, and you're saying, okay, now I've got the lot, what can I actually build on this property? And so that's where you start getting into the building requirements and height restrictions, setbacks, and all the number of issues of how now do I build this particular building. In the case of a hotel, the hotel is 100 rooms with a convention component to it, rooftop bar and grill, and we're planning a small, quaint restaurant in the lobby, and very, very nice hotel. I'm not sure if you've heard or seen or read some of the documents about the hotel being called the Edward Hotel for the first governor of Ohio. We're trying to create an ambiance of a historic hotel. Imagine a 1900 building built in that spot that's now going to get renovated. So we're going to try to build it in what Choice, the relevance of Choice is, Choice Hotels has what's called the collection that allows us to build without their requirements. So traditionally, if you wanted a Marriott courtyard, if you notice, every courtyard's identical wherever you go in the world. And if you go to say a Hampton Inn, they're identical. So when you buy the flag or the franchise for certain hotels, they say, okay, here's the design, here's what it looks like, and that's it. Our Ascend collection, it's one flag within the Choice family, but the Ascend collection allows complete architectural license to design and have the freedom to design whatever you want, which is what I needed and wanted for downtown, because I wanted to go be a historic, kind of feel like historic, even though it's being built new. And so that was something I felt was really important to the community and the vision of what we wanted to do there, not just put a box with a Choice, Choice big old ugly sign outside. And I mean, it'd still be great to have a hotel downtown, but it wouldn't be the absolute utmost best opportunity. And that's what I'm shooting for, the absolute best that it can be. And I felt the Ascend collection gave us that opportunity. So anyways, so going back to the entitlement process is, okay, now we need, this much setbacks within the lot. this height, this density, and there's a lot of things that turned out, and you don't really get this information until you're actually in the entitlement stage, okay? And you don't get to entitlement stage until you have the property under contract. So everything everything is a process and a step. And then you don't really know, because there is a lot of variance in time. Okay, so now we know what we want to build, okay? But guess what? The building codes don't allow, once you get up a certain height, in the case of Tiffin, once you get up to a certain height, the setbacks start creeping in. So the higher you go, the smaller the footprint. Okay, the smaller the stamp that you can actually build. And so by the time we were going up, it turned out that our footprint was gonna be, like imagine just an elevator shaft. That's actually how the code is written. I think the city is considering revamping that a little bit. But we had to then create plans and create, what we wanted to build and present that to zoning, your local, to Matt Watson. And then he had to deny it because it didn't meet, the standards. And then that had to go to the Board of Appeals. And so the Board of Appeals thankfully voted for the project and allowed the variances that we requested. And that's the approval that was received November 2019. Okay, so again, these are significant timeframes and also show continued progress. Every step of the way, this project has continued since, not only from when I first started talking to David and the mayor, but since we signed the agreement and continued to this day. So in December 2019, at that point, we had completed the entitlement stage, completed the process of getting the approvals we needed to be able to then go and start the financing stage, okay? So the financing stage is critical because you can't go to anyone and say, hey, I want to finance this hotel, it's 100 rooms, and, okay, well, do you have approvals? No, not yet, we're gonna get them. Okay, well, call me when you get it. I mean, so you have to understand the conversations and the process, everything has to take its course. Now, once you have entitlement though, once you have the flag that I mentioned, the reservation systems, anybody financing a hotel or anything like that wants the reservation systems, which drives income, drives occupancy. And so all these things, all these factors, I'm simplifying it, but it's a process that is required for financing. So entering the financing stage was right where we began at the point where March 2020, I'm here, we were regrouping, excited that we had the entitlements ready to go. And okay, what do we do now? And so the city has obligations to me as the buyer also. The city has to vacate some alleys because the lots are connecting and there's some issues that have to be processed at some point. So if we were to close today, we couldn't. So the city has to go through that process, and I'm sure you'll hear about that down the road, but there's obligations on both sides. And so the city wanted to go further and understand we have financing in place, we're ready to go forward, and we're looking forward to a closing around this time, at this point, this date in the future. And that's what the March meeting, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, we had actually had discussions specifically about, we had Matt Watson in the meeting, we were talking about the alley vacations, and we were actually setting kind of the next critical path sequence for this stage. Now, something very exciting, and I'm gonna fast forward a little bit in finance, but when you go into finance, you start going to the different companies that will do financing on a multifamily project or condominium construction, or in this case, hotel. And different banks, different lenders have their niche financing. Some banks will do it all, some banks will do just bits and pieces. In this case, our bank, which is Premier Bank, I want to announce that. Premier Bank's a local bank. Mark Streeter, I don't know if you know Mark Streeter, I don't know if you know of Premier Bank. They're a prominent bank from Toledo. Turns out Mark Streeter was the captain of the basketball team while I was in Heidelberg, without aging myself. While I was the captain of the football team, he was the captain of the basketball team. And it's just a great opportunity that Heidelberg is making such a impact in Tiffin, that we're able to come back together in this kind of team. But the very start of the financing stage, we brought on Bradley Payne. Andy's here from Bradley Payne. And so once we get entitlement, we bring to them, hey, we have entitlement. This is what's so relevant about that phase. So going from the entitlement stage and going into financing stages, okay, now we have a project. So the project isn't even real until you get through all these stages and you get the approvals from the city. And I just want you to know the true essence of what happens. At that point, you're really starting at ground zero at that point, because nothing happens, you can't even have a conversation with financing until you have entitlement, you know what you can build, and you have approval to build it. At that point, that's when the conversations start. So we brought on, we requested Bradley Payne review our project, because that's really the process. They have to say, hey, we believe in it or not, because they don't get paid until the project's financed. So imagine that. So they have to believe in it, and they looked at the project and believed in it, and they've been with us now for quite many months. And at that process, we're creating projections, financial projections, construction budgets, all the huge labor-intensive process of reaching a point where not only is a project, we can build it, but is it financially feasible? Okay, so that's another whole layer of, hey, your vision, they could have all said, you know what, you're crazy, it's not gonna work. You love Tiffin and you love the way it's gonna think in your mind, look, but financially doesn't make sense. And that could have happened, okay? Hey, you're totally wrong, that could have happened. How many projects in our time, we think it's great and all of a sudden it doesn't work, So Bradley Payne as a third party came in to verify, okay, now you can build this and we believe in it, here's the projections, and the numbers work. From there, we go to several banks, we talked to some local banks, we talked to some bigger banks. Obviously, we're in the middle of COVID. So first, going back now in that process, before we got to Bradley Payne, we have a situation where COVID comes in, and I felt, just like anything, looking forward, I said, with the shutdown that exists, anytime you're going through a very critical, difficult time economically, again, you don't just flip a switch and now everything's back to normal. So there's a time frame that it takes to turn the engine on and start turning those motors that start very slowly, especially in the financial world. It happens the same in manufacturing. We're having a huge crisis right now with lumber and material cost. Everything was shut down, and now those pipelines have to start. Well, there's huge pressure and demand, and prices have gone 35% more for lumber, and it's really gone crazy. So in anticipation of some of this, and also the financing world and hospitality, we got on a call, and I said to the team, I said, look, I requested, I think it was a year originally, and the team and Brent recommended, look, let's just do 6 months, and then we'll see how it goes in 6 months. We'll reevaluate, and we agreed to request 6 months at the time to see what's even gonna happen. And frankly, at that moment when COVID started and after all this, I honestly thought I had lost all my time, all my money, and all the energy that it's taken to do the project. Not something I wanted to accept, and very lightly. But you think you have to be in realistic kind of stage, and so that's what the 6-month request was for, that was voted for. Because we didn't really know what was gonna happen. We didn't know it would be a year, we didn't know what would happen post that time, and it was all uncertain for everyone. And so luckily we're not there anymore, but we're still now in the beginning stage of the recovery. So what happened since? In the midst of the COVID, I didn't give up, continued to press forward, and that's when the team came on, started looking at the project, and against all odds, they believed in the project, they believed in the future of Tiffin, because all that has to be part of everybody on the same team. That they said, yes, we believe in it and we want to be part of this project. So bringing them on was a huge factor for us. But what happens after these projections that I'm talking about? Again, we think it's great, it's all great. Here's the numbers, here's this, here's that. We start talking to different banks, and Premier, Mr. Streeter, Mark Streeter, comes back, says, your equity team which I had in place before I started, because I wouldn't have spent the money and time to get a project done if I didn't have all the money to do the project, right? So, Mark says, I need an equity investor on your team that has to be in the local footprint. And my team is coming out of South Florida. So, again, things you don't expect, but you want a bank, you have a bank that loves the project, and now they're saying has to be someone local in the footprint, which we have, okay? But these are the type of obstacles that you run into in this whole huge process of putting all these pieces together and creating a project of this magnitude. Again, whether it's Tiffin, whether it's Cleveland, whether it's the Flats, this is what it takes to get a project done. And so I'm very excited to be able to be here in front of you today to announce Premier Bank. They have agreed to finance the condo construction once the 50% pre-sales is obtained, which we feel very confident that we will be able to obtain. Condominium exists of 111 units, so it's really, whatever it is, 50, 56, whatever the number is of potential buyers. Even early on, I've had people approaching me that want to get out of their big family home. And one of the issues in the Tiffin market is that you have no step down. So once you have the empty nesters that graduate, the children graduate, now they have the big family home, they're tired of now having to do the lawns and upkeep, and they want to travel or have a little more freedom. They have to stay in those homes, and there's no way for new families to come into those homes. And that's where the inventory and the whole life cycle of the real estate market in Tiffin is locked up. And so by opening, having a condo opportunity or even an apartment opportunity will free up some of these homes that aren't on the market just because there's no place to go. And there's a gap. That gap is, I'm not ready for assisted living. I'm not ready for a senior home or senior development. There's no way. I want to play golf, but I don't want to be, in that environment, right? So I know you have plenty of beautiful places like that here in Tiffin, but that gap is empty. And so this project starts in a very, very small space, filling that gap in. And hopefully this will only produce more potential opportunities for other developers to come in and do projects that fill in that gap too, before the senior housing does. So very, very excited to have Premier Bank as our partner on the financing side for the condominium. And the timing there and the timing there was, I felt like because the project is the first of its kind in this community, so originally I planned on doing the condominium first and then the hotel. And so what I did is through this process of understanding a project, things change and you have to be malleable in this process too. So at that point I thought, if I build the hotel and the multifamily apartments together, that will solidify and really confirm the condo. And if anyone comes in and says, well, how do I know you're going to build it? And so, well, just look across the street. Those buildings are being built now. And it would add credibility to the whole project. So that was the change to the timing of the project. If you had heard, the condos are going to be first, that was the reason for the change. So right now the plan is to build the hotel and the multifamily together for several reasons, but primarily for cost reduction. So now you're bidding out two big projects at the same time. One contractor comes in and can build both and save money, especially with construction costs as they are today. But going back to the hotel and Premier Bank, so Mark says to me, if we would have come to me before COVID, I would have financed the entire thing, including the hotel. Okay. Unfortunately, because of COVID, the hospitality industry has been destroyed, as you know. Travel and hotels. Most are either in workout or in some type of process of recovering. And so in Mark's specific portfolio, he has, I think it's 5 or 6 hotels that were doing workouts and are still in reserve, where they're impacting the bank balance sheet negatively. So he can't possibly go to the board, even though he loves the project. Hey, I have this new hotel in Tiffin. I want to finance that as well. He can't do that. So I've obtained a secondary financing to do a bridge construction and for, you know, about 3 to 4 years so that the hotel can be built and then Premier. At that point, of course, we're looking at 3 years down the road, but at that point, Premier will refinance the existing lender out or someone else will come in and refinance the current financing for the hotel. So everything, as you can see, is pieces and pieces and putting it together, but it all has had a huge impact with the COVID, both timeframes that, you know, again, I thank you for your patience. I know it's probably very frustrating for the city and for the community. It's been extremely frustrating for me to not have been able to go further, faster, you know? And I apologize for that, but I've done everything, I can tell you, I've done every single thing I have been able to do within my ability to continue progress, continue to make this project a reality. And so it's been a huge challenge, but I'm here for a reason. I'm here because I haven't given up, like I said before. And you can see based on where we are, even during the 6-month pause. So you imagine that everything just opened up in Ohio, not long, 2 weeks ago even. So if I came up here and said, okay, we're now ready, we're ready, COVID, we're now open, that would be a year that we've had to deal with COVID, or a little more. And now I'd be here saying, okay, now I'm ready to start. I've got my franchise, I've got entitlement, and we just pressed the pause button. Now I'm lifting the pause button. Okay, now I'm gonna get started. I'm talking to a few people to help with financing and help join the team to help the financing stage. And now we're at the very start of the financing stage. And so we're asking for, for more time. That's not what I'm asking for. Because even during COVID, we were working. We were busting our butt to get the team in place, push forward, against all odds, push forward and find a bank that absolutely loves the project. And so today, we're at the stage where we're close to finishing financing stage. We're still in that kind of finishing process. The first time when I met the mayor and the team, just last week, correct? Just last week, right? When we met?
Yeah, I think it was just last week.
Where I presented to them everything that I'm explaining to you. I didn't have even authority to release the bank name. So, but Mark was very, very excited to say, yes, please, you can do that. And you can share my name with the team and obviously make it public notice. And that enough shows where we are in this project and at the level of the financing of the project where we are. So it's an exciting time because we didn't waste time. We were still working hard for the project and for the community, even during a time where we really didn't have to because, hey, it's COVID, and use excuse, everything's COVID, We're doers. Okay? We're people here making things happen, wanting to make things happen, and number one, committing to our word that, hey, I'm fighting for the project, I'm fighting for Tiffin, and we've proven that, and we're here to show you that with actual actions, not just words. And so we are about, I would say, 4 months ahead of where we should be with in the financing stage. Okay, just to give you kind of a time frame and a window of where that is. We're probably about another, I would say, 45, 60 days of financing and getting things a little bit further tightened up and underwriting and details, but we are far enough along that the bank is allowing us to release the name, just so you have the confidence in that process. Okay. Where do we go from here? Is that we go into basically the final stage, which is the construction and permit stage, and that's where we are at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to run a little parallel with the financing stage being finished up and the next stage, which is the construction process. And there's one last step that we need to go through, bring back the facades to the Architectural Review Board. And so the intentions, again, a lot of you weren't here in the early stages. So the intentions of the buildings architecturally is to build buildings that will look identical or very near what you have existing in the community. The brick veneers and as if a building was built, as much as possible in the 1900s as far as the downtown hotel is concerned. So there's, in my quest for what we're trying to accomplish, we're not bringing in some contemporary looking thing that the board is gonna be like, go back to the drawing board. I mean, we're starting out with the proper intentions of what we want the end result to look like in all the buildings, no matter what building, so that they look like they've been here, you know, from long ago, except now they're new and they have the new interiors and all the amenities that someone would want to live downtown, or if someone would want if they're staying in a hotel downtown, just so you have an understanding of that step. So this is the stage that we go into, because in order to go to the Architectural Review Board, you can't just throw a facade together and say, hey, what do you think? You know, you actually have to develop those plans of what you're gonna build, because then so you know that's where the window's gonna go, and that's where, you know, how the building's actually gonna go. So it's a very big stage and a very big commitment financially. And that's the next stage I'm prepared to take. With that, I'm here because I need to know, and the team needs to know, that we have the time we need to get the project, first the property closed, and get the project started, break ground, and built. So that's kind of where we are in this stage, in this process. So we're entering the construction permit stage while we're finishing the financing stage and kind of running parallel. So before the commitment, we need approval from you, so that then we can start that process. And there's a lot of, you know, money committed to prepare for Architectural Review Board and taking the project to the next level, really to the end. So if you really look at it, it's almost the fourth quarter. We're beginning the fourth quarter in this project at this stage. We have never been closer. We have never been closer to being able to deliver this vision to Tiffin. And to be this far, I'm more excited today than even in the beginning that this is going to get done. I believe in the project, and I know the mayor and some other people from the community that I speak to on the streets or when I'm in the restaurants, and constantly over the many years believe in this and really would love to see this actually become reality. So the impact of what we're asking for, I'll kind of summarize that in the end, but there's more benefit to the city than just having a few brand new buildings in place. There's actual direct impact. And I think Mayor, your team and David could actually, you know, quantify numbers a little bit more. There's some rough numbers that I have on job creation. I mean, I think economic development, what this project will do for Tiffin, will open the door for more. I've said it many times, gosh, I wish I was building 162 apartments, not 62 now, right? Based on the needs and based on things that are happening. But just some rough numbers on employee income tax. Real quick, between the hotel and the restaurant, it's about 50,000, approximate. These are very approximate. The numbers could be as much as 70,000 a year. Okay, but we're using the 50,000. It's approximately $500,000 over 10 years of employee income tax. It's going to directly impact the city of Tiffin. The condo project, remember, each one of the buildings has retail at the bottom on the lobby floor. So if you're going to be walking along the riverfront, there'll be restaurants and there'll be retail all along the front on the first floor of each of the buildings, including the condominium. And those are going to be leased out. We have a very prominent, which you're all going to know once we can release that name, a very prominent restaurant that wants to come in and take the entire 10,000 square feet of the first floor of the multifamily building. Okay, absolutely very exciting. And when we can release it, of course, we'll do a press release. But that employer isn't even included in these numbers for their restaurant. But the hotel, restaurant, rooftop bar, the condominium will have retail. We're estimating that will be approximately 180,000 over 10 years. So almost 700,000. And I think the numbers have a movement. So for instance, why do I say that? The hotel has some seasonality, as you can imagine, and we're also going to have events that will bring employees in temporarily. So all these factors will bring those numbers up slightly. So will it be $1 million? I'm not sure, but it's somewhere between 700 and $1 million over 10 years that just the employment tax will impact the city. Property tax and other things. Again, Mayor, I don't have the details of how that all breaks down. I don't have the impact on the county with hotel tax. You know, there's a lot of other layers there that I think maybe we can work a little bit on that and come up with some more numbers over the next few months as things get closer. But there's direct impact on the city revenues that this project will bring to you. So where we are today is that if you go through the timing, what I'm trying to avoid in part of our meeting last week was, what I'm trying to avoid is, hey, give me a couple of months, you know, let's go a little further, and then we'll come back and ask for a few more months, and hey, let's come back for a few more months. My objective is, I'm trying to say, here's where we are at this moment, and what we believe is we can get the project delivered, and we can get to a closing, and we can get to groundbreaking. And so we're asking for an extension, which includes one request, okay? Again, things could happen along the way, but how far will we be if we actually do need, you know, a small window at that time? So we basically lose the month of June because we're in this process, of course, respectfully, for all of you having to go through it, questions answered, whatever it is you need. And then the vote process, I think, Brent, is 2 or 3 readings from what I understand. So we're basically looking at June as kind of a lost month to go into what I call the construction stage. For us, on the financing stage, we're very close, and so what we're doing there doesn't really cost us money because we're just going through providing more information, and it just starts kind of converging into the construction phase. So we're going to continue that, but we're not able to really start the trigger until we have the vote officially. Then we have, we run into, you know, November, Thanksgiving, Christmas. We almost lose 3 weeks, potentially a month into the first week of January, where technically it's really not a month that's productive or things that can really progress or move aggressively. So I'm not taking anything for granted. So what we're doing is basically taking those 2 months and putting it on. And what I am requesting today, or requesting of you, is that you approve an extension that takes us to a date or on or before February 28, 2022, which gives us, we make up for June, we make up for December, Christmas holiday time, and it gives us the extra 2 months. And basically, it's a 6-month window that I'm looking for if you kind of add those 2 windows in there. And a break ground by June 2022. So the break ground is really a significant point. What we're hoping to do is really push into spring of 2022. That's the target we're after, okay? But we're dealing with this crisis that, again, we had no control over COVID. We had no control of requesting a pause and requesting the project need more time. But it is what it is, unfortunately, and everybody's recovering from it. But for the remnants of this COVID is impacting everyone still. Our children in schools and how things happen. I mean, we don't have to go into all that, but it's understandable. It's so one of the things is the cost of materials, which is impacting the project and the construction budget significantly. So what we're doing by having a June 2022 is giving us a window of time. And I was talking to the contractor today, in fact, we're going to consider other materials as well, going steel instead of lumber, which is what the project originally was going to be used. And they're saying they're predicting lumber costs to drop by, you know, Q3, 4 in that window of time. Again, they're predictions. Things seem to be softening because demand, you know, production is gearing up. We don't really know, so that's kind of a window of opportunity that we don't really know. So that's giving us a little bit of extra time to price the project. More importantly, we don't want to break ground before winter. We want to break ground, you know, be able to get into the ground in spring. So that's the objective. So between spring and summer 22 is our target. And we believe, based on where we are at this very moment, we can achieve these deadlines in this time frame to deliver this project to the city of Tiffin. So, you know, with that, I think I've stated everything that I've had to present to you and explain. Hopefully this information is helpful in educating you if you haven't been through this process before, and also giving you kind of a vision of where we've been, where we are, and where we hope to be in very short order, actually. So if you have any questions, I'll gladly address them.
Anyone have any questions? Councilman Perry?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So I'm curious, what your qualifications are or background in the hotel industry, to kind of what brought you to this project to begin with. Like, have you run a project like this before?
I've been in senior housing my entire career. Senior housing, assisted living, nursing homes. I grew up in the business since my father was in the business in 1970. Right now, there's companies like Marriott and Hilton that went into senior housing because you have people 24 hours a day. You know, it's a very parallel hospitality where you have food and beverage, you have food and beverage for 200 people living in one place. I mean, so I've run my own facilities. I helped grow. My number one role in my family company was financing and new business development, and which I did, and I grew our family company to 20 facilities throughout the state of Florida. And so we still currently own, I think, not 8 or 9 buildings throughout Florida. So historically, I absolutely have the experience, okay? As far as getting a project, the vision of a project, negotiating a project, getting entitlement on a project, that you've seen in action to be where we are. As far as the actual management of the hotel, I don't plan on running the hotel or making food in the kitchen for the rooftop bar. I have a very prominent hotel management company that will come in. They have, I think, 50-plus hotels all throughout the region. They're a regional company. Even though there was a larger worldwide company I was considering, but I like the regional, more close, kind of more attentive to the community. So they'll be the ones that actually operate the day-to-day business and operations. And so you don't really need the experience if you have the ability to hire the experience, is what I'm trying to say. So in this case, that's the plan for the hotel. Same with the multifamily. There'll be a management company for them too.
Right. You mentioned your equity team. I was wondering, like, who makes up the equity team? How many people are part of that? What's that term even mean?
It's interesting that you asked that question. I mean, I mentioned in the meeting first on, you know, if you're in a city like Cleveland or Miami or Las Vegas or anywhere, there's thousands of projects being built. And so a question of whether the financing's in place or whether an equity team is there or not is irrelevant, because you're really just presenting a project and it's going to get built or it's not. It's going to get approved or it's not. So the detail, I can't release information about the team. Obviously, I've put a lot of money personally up to this point. I've risked a huge amount of money and obviously time to this point. And so I wouldn't be going forward if I didn't have the ability to get to the finish line. So I can assure you that that's just like now you know that Premier Bank's involved. Premier Bank is only the debt. They're not going to finance anything without the other pieces. So, and here, we're already past that process.
You talked about, personal money. How much money of your own is in this project? I mean, is it all outside money, or are you putting up a big portion of this? Or
I'm the only partner, I'm the only owner, and I'm the only investor to date. But I would not disclose anything regarding specific numbers.
Okay, because I mean, to me, that would show the kind of commitment you have to the city. Just I was wondering that.
Let me, if I may.
Yeah.
Let me address that. My commitment to the city. Last week, I had to be here twice. Once to meet a group that wants to lease the downstairs multifamily. I had to go back. I went back to Miami and flew back on Thursday to meet the mayor, just last week. To get here on Monday, I have to be here on Sunday because I can't get a flight to get here early and on time, or if in case the flights are overbooked or something happens, which things happen with flights, I would miss the meeting. Now, take that over the past 4 years that I've been in Tiffin, 4 years, not 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years, and the mayor can confirm that, the team can confirm that. To get the entitlement, to buy the franchise, I mean, this is money that's been, the franchise alone is $50,000. I negotiated to $35,000. Okay, this is common knowledge. Okay, so I don't think it's irrelevant. Again, I don't want to invalidate your question. I'm just giving you the fact that if you talk about commitment, the mayor and the city has seen commitment through action over 4 years, and now I'm back to finish the project. So hopefully that answers your question.
Another thing I wanted to touch on about communication. To me, I thought this project was dead because I haven't heard anything about it in the last, 6 months. Just me and my little business for Tiffin Pedal Company, we're getting a new bike made. I called them probably every day, every other day. I can't imagine having a project this big. And I guess I don't know how much communication you had with the city in the last 6 months. I know there was a Tiffinite that was emailing you, Mr. Herrig, and, some of his questions I had as well. Why are we not seeing anything? Where's the progress? The website's down. Why is that? And even, his questions went unanswered. So that, I mean, that to me raised some red flags, because I'm like, if he can't even answer, this guy, how's he gonna, go forward with this multi-million-dollar project? You know what I'm saying? So have you been communicating with the city that I just don't know about in the last 6 months, or? Yeah, that's my question.
Some more
Yeah.
quick. The project has been dead. The project was dead. I said that. I don't know if I said that. I said the project was dead in the past 6 months or 8 months, or as soon as, from March 2020. That's why I requested the 6 months. We didn't know what was gonna happen.
Right.
In my opinion, at that time, in my unfortunate, reality check that you have to have every once in a while, I mentioned to the group, I think, in my presentation, that I thought I had lost everything. And everything equates to, if you're a small business guy, you're not getting paid every hour of your day, are you? No, you're not. You can't be paid every hour of the day, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're working 12 hours a day. You're working 24 hours a day, because your mind's constantly working to either solve a problem or figure out how you can get more business, or how you're gonna expand and get another bicycle, or another, whatever it is. You don't just shut it down if you're working as an entrepreneur. This is an entrepreneurial process, this entire process. There's all unknowns. From the very beginning, from 4 years ago, it was unknown that I would be here in front of you. It was unknown that we would have COVID. It was unknown that we would even be, out of COVID at this stage, the way things were going. So the project was absolutely dead 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, okay? Absolutely. There was nothing to say. There was nothing to answer, because I didn't have answers. So how can you answer somebody or talk about something that you don't have any answer to? Okay, so there's also an obligation, and there's a fine line there, again, politically, and how to, the community has representation. So the community, and there's a fine line where now I'm talking to the community, and where the community has resources to speak to the mayor, who's an amazing mayor and communicates to his staff, we had a 6-month extension, pause, hey, nothing's happening. That's what the extension was for. The point I was trying to make was, even within that 6 months, where I was not obligated to communicate at all with the city based on the pause, correct? That was the pause, that was the request. Pause on continued progress, pause on dates, pause on everything, until we get out of the COVID and see what's going on. That was the objective. Nothing's gonna happen for 6 months. But something did happen. In the past 3 months, or 4 months, I think is our time frame, when we started working, even though we weren't obligated to, okay? And this is where we go back to understanding my level of commitment to this project. So things changed, and we had an opportunity, a small window of opportunity to say, okay, let's restart the car, let's warm up the car in winter, let's see if there's an opportunity here, let's see if we can, keep this thing alive, with the belief that the project was 100% dead, okay? That's all that happened. And I don't believe in coincidences, but I can tell you, I was like, okay, let's just give it a try in my own mind. The project's dead, but let's give it a try. That's where we were. So what your perception is, or was, until today, okay? Or until you got the announcement, hey, we want to come and meet with you, was absolutely accurate, okay? It was dead. And so in my initial request to Brent and the team was, hey, let's pause this for a year, because I think it's gonna be beyond 6 months by the time you start gearing back up and hospitality financing. Right now, no one's financing hotels, okay? I'm having to go to secondary level lenders, because nobody's, to this day, still not financing hotels. Premier's not financing hotels, okay? So it's still a very, very difficult time for hospitality, all right? Even though hospitality is bouncing back, I've been flying the last 2 weeks. I don't know, I know the mayor's flown recently, but if anyone's flown, you can't even walk in the airports. You can't, the planes are packed. I was bumped. I was supposed to be here at the last meeting when the request was made, and I was bumped. That's why I have to start coming Sundays, just to not risk being bumped again, okay? So hospitality's bouncing back, but there's a lag time between, numbers actually coming in and being reported from third parties about hospitality's, real resurgence. We all expect it, we're all seeing it, but the banks move very slowly, okay? So, again, you were correct, okay? Nothing was being reported, nothing was really happening just in the recent, I would say 2 months or so when the team has started to hear from us, hey, we're working, we're doing, and this week was the first time, this last week was the first time I have seen the mayor or met with the team in almost a year. So everything you're saying is accurate, and obviously that's what we're here, to show you what we've done and to show you that things are different now, and that we're planning on moving forward to make this a real project.
Thank you. Councilwoman Boyle.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to say thank you for coming here. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time and your effort and your money investment in the city. Couple clarifying questions that I had is, you mentioned multiple times that you're very close to concluding the financing stage. So in your earlier statement, you indicated that Premier will not finance your condo construction until 50% of the condos are purchased. So does that indicate then that you're close to that 50% number?
No, what you want to get is a bank, or you want to have a financing arm or someone that will finance the construction of a project. So this is what's critical, that their level of interest and a contingency that they provide is, we're willing to provide construction for this project contingent upon you reaching 50% pre-sales. That's where we are at this stage with the condominium. That has to happen, and a sales office has to be opened up, which we will, and then we'll do the pre-sales at that time. They're not sold, they're pre-sold. The deposit's put in place for somebody who wants to buy a condo. They're just reserving their condo in that building. They're not closing. They're not writing a check for, say, $200,000 to buy a condo. They're putting down $20,000, let's say, or $40,000 as a deposit, and now they have a contract to purchase that condo once it's actually built.
So you're close to 50% of the pre-sales then?
No. That'll happen once we open the pre-sales office and we start reselling them.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so how much is an average unit in these condos?
Right now, we're at 200 to 300, depending on where you are in the building. If you're on the higher floor, you're gonna pay more. If you're able to see the sunset, you're gonna pay more. That's how every unit will have different pricing. If you're on a corner looking at the city and sunsets, the more desirable units are gonna cost more. If you're in a penthouse unit, it'll cost more.
Sure.
There's a lot of variables there, but pretty much you're in that starting point of 200 range.
Okay.
Which I feel is a fair price to bring to the market.
Sure. And then for your comment about breaking ground in June, is that due to cost of building material at this time?
The timing for breaking ground is June, to give us a couple of months after closing to just have a little bit of a window there, if there's any way to price out the project to be, the further out as prices are, what's expected is the production will start reaching the demand, and obviously economics will bring the price down automatically if you have more supply than demand. So we're just trying to give ourselves our time, because there's a crisis right now with this situation, that the date of June 2022 is being requested, yes.
Okay.
And we want to break ground, and we want to start the project, and also be, the other side of that is we want to be closed up, shut in before winter.
That's all I have right now.
Councilman Jones, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hernando, I appreciate your presentation and your dedication coming up twice in 2 weeks here. You've answered most of my concerns. One was, I was going to ask yourself or your LLC, why Tiffin, why not Findlay, why not Florida, or something like that, but you answered that. You mentioned, talking about relocating back to Tiffin, if I understood you correctly?
Am I relocating?
Yes.
No, I'll have a home here, but I won't be.
Home here,
back and
okay.
forth.
So that shows commitment on your part, that's great. Ms. Boyle touched on this one. I was gonna say if building materials is up roughly 30%, I know you're not, LLC is not doing this for the dollars, they're doing it for your vision. But I was gonna say, why not wait a year until the pricing maybe comes back to normal? But breaking ground in the spring or summer of 2022 would take care of that. Total cost of the project, are we talking 5 million, 10 million, 15 million?
Overall, the project, including the multifamily, is over 40 million.
Oh, my goodness, all right, well, I'm glad I asked.
And just to make a point, we are gonna make money here, okay? We're not just doing this to have fun. We are having fun. We love Tiffin. We're committed to Tiffin. Obviously, that's what you've seen in our commitment over 4 years to be here. It'll be 5 years now with the additional time. And it's gonna be, 6 or 7 by the time we have construction and we're built and we're going on. But I'm often asked, oh, are you building and then flipping, okay? I plan on holding on to the project and being an owner of the project out at least 7 to 10 years. So the plan is not just to build and just be gone. The condo project is, because you're building and you're selling. So that part of it actually gets sold off to individual owners and the people, live in those units. But as far as the hotel and multifamily, I plan to hold on to that for quite a long time. So I plan to be part of the community and in a contributing way for a long time.
Two more and I'll,
Go ahead.
average square foot of this condominium, or condo is, are we talking?
Really just depends. I mean, you're gonna have some smaller units because we want to get into the market with some smaller units and price points. Believe it or not, there's people that want penthouses and they're willing to pay a lot of money, because they have it or they, whether it's ego, I want to own the most expensive unit in the building. And I've had people approach me in that way, believe it or not. So, average, I could say is 2,000 square feet, 1,500, some window like that.
And I heard you say something about vacating some additional alleys. I know we vacated the one by the taxi cab, that alley.
At this point, nothing has been officially done yet. That procedure still has to be done. Is that correct, Brent? Nothing.
It is correct, yeah, the alleys
Okay,
have not.
there's some alleys that still need to be vacated, correct? Is that what you're saying?
No alleys have been vacated to date.
Okay,
But in order for us to close on the land, there's some alleys and some parcels that Brent can give you more detail on it that do need to be vacated in order to deliver the land to us at closing.
if they're not vacated, what happens, I guess?
Well, the city has to, in order for them to close and deliver the land, they have to deliver those as part of the lots. Apparently, there's cut-throughs that have to be made part of the lots themselves.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Yanatuno?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hernando, it's a pleasure seeing you again. I did hear this whole thing before, and I'm still quite excited, and I wanted you to know that I'm very happy that you haven't given up on us. And I think I bothered you about this before, because in my past line of work, I'm very interested in construction and design and all that stuff. And so when will we see renderings? Because I know you've got the setbacks now. Before you could decide that because of determining setbacks. When will we see renderings?
So that's part of the process that we start going into actual official plans.
Understand?
To permit and actually they go to Ashland, I guess, to get approval. So that's the next stage where in order to get the rendering for architectural review, they actually have to develop and create the whole building. So that's the next phase that has to be spent, money has to be spent to actually achieve that. So that's where we're entering now. I would say maybe 3 months, 4 months at max, where we're able to show or publicly display those. And that's when we expect to go to Architectural Review Board as well.
Which will probably help then also with the sale of the condos, I would
100%.
assume. Yep.
Because you actually have a building now. You're gonna see what the building will look like. You're gonna see what the skyline will look like. We had some things provided in the Board of Appeal, which we submitted, but those were just renderings for height and for entitlement purposes. Now it becomes the real buildings, what are they gonna look like, and you'll see coloring, and similar to the courthouse, the new building that was built, They had to get approval. They didn't like certain colors of brick or something. I think there was a few things back and forth, and we'll give the board the ability to help us and between everybody come to a beautiful conclusion.
And there kept being a variance between the stories. Have we locked in on how tall it will be, how many stories?
What you should expect is sometimes when you're going into an entitlement process, you're asking for the kitchen sink, basically, you know? But the buildings predominantly are going to be probably 4 or 5 stories high. They're not going to be 100 stories. Something technically that you might not know, once you cross over 5 stories, you go from mid-rise construction rating to high-rise construction rating, which is a huge difference in cost.
I understand, that's why I was asking where
So-
that ended up
So, yeah,
at.
no, we are aware of that, and so that's really what you should expect. 4 to 5 stories, especially in the hotel and in multifamily building. That's what should be expected.
Okay, thank you.
Nice seeing you again, too.
I have a couple of questions. How long will it take to build this out?
The hotel and multifamily should be, you hear 8 months, 9 months, but I would tell you, let's plan on a year and a half roughly from break ground is really realistic. Things can happen, but that's really what we should be expected.
The other question I had, you said that Premier wanted a local equity partner.
They define it as inside of their footprint.
Okay,
That's how they define it, so.
okay. So local doesn't necessarily mean somebody from Tiffin, it could.
No, it's
Okay.
Toledo, there's a radius of what they're looking for, yes.
And does that equity partner have some relationship to the particular, the hotel or the restaurant or anything, any of the activities of the project? Do they have a background in that, I guess is my question? Or are they just an investor?
Oh, I understand. They have background in the business, yes.
So you've got them, they're acceptable to the bank, so you cross that hurdle? Okay, all right, very good. Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. February 28th, 2022 doesn't really seem that far away to me. Seems like a very aggressive date, and I would hate for you to come back for another extension. I don't know. Do we need to push that date out further, or you feel very confident?
Well, it's a different approach that I've always taken in general with projects that I've done or financing or closings. We've all been through a house closing. Everyone's going crazy for that closing to happen at the last minute. It's kind of an approach that I've taken in this case. So if you want to make it June 2022, of course, hopefully you've seen the commitment. And that's what the mayor and David, as protectors of the community, right? As protectors of city land, they're negotiating the best they can, and they put terms in there to keep anybody, not just me, to, hey, continued progress. What have you done in the last 2-3 months? Show us, prove to us you're still working on this project, right? Or we're going to find another developer, right? They've done that, and I have fulfilled that for them for 4 years, okay? Minus this situation with COVID, and even within that COVID 6 months, I was working. At least maybe 2.5, 3 months of that 6 months, we were working. So it's a different approach, Steve. Again, good to see you again, too. I know you were part of the original team with Mr. Hayes and the other team. So the approach could be, we stick to that, okay? But imagine me coming back and it's, late end of January, and now I'm saying, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, we've got architectural approval, we've got, and it's now, I'm just layering all the things we've done up to now, like today, in January and say, well, look, we're short 30 days, or so that's one approach. Or, hey, let's just push everything to June 2022. The language on or before, right, gives us the opportunity to close sooner if we can, and that's what we're pushing for. You have to understand, the guys from Bradley Payne don't get paid till we finance and we close, okay? Everybody in the team, the entire team, is basically, in essence, working for free until this closes. So you cannot have more incentive more fire under people's feet. We don't need an agreement to be pushing us, right? We don't need the board to push us because we're pushing ourselves as hard and as fast as we can. And I hope you walk away with that feeling that gosh, you know, even in 6 months of a pause, we were still fighting through a very difficult time, and here we are, right? So, Steve, that's a great question, a great position to be in, and I would open it to you if the city would prefer to say, you know what, let's just do June 22 for one date, honor before closing, honor before breaking ground. I welcome that. It doesn't mean I'm not going to potentially be in front of the mayor every month where he could give you updates on where we are, or you're not going to see progress, because you will, you know? Or, you know, hey, let's do an update. Let's go back in front of council in 3 months and, hey, how are things going? Or you're going to see Architectural Review Board approves renderings. I mean, you're going to see the progress that we are set to put in place, you know? So it's kind of an automatic thing you're going to be already kind of in tune to. But if you feel it's a great recommendation for me, I would definitely take it. Again, language is honor before. So we could still fulfill, hey, if we have to close the first week of March because we're running around for a vote or something happens, we're not now, oh my God, now we got to stop. Now we got to start over with an approval. So that's a great valid point you bring.
One other item, and I haven't looked at the 2 alley vacation requests, the petitions, for quite some time. One of them was initiated by the city, which could be acted upon, and I believe the other one required the LLC to be the owner of the property before we could act upon it, if I'm not mistaken.
I'd have to look at those two. The one involved the alley, Lot 4, because Lot 4 is, there's an alley that goes all the way to the river. And so it separates a couple of the parcels of Lot 4. The other is in Lot 6 behind the Kears building. Those are the 2 locations. But I'd have to look at the actual petitions to see who would need to sign those. Those kind of were put on pause too, about a year
I've got them.
Right. It's your committee, right? Yeah.
The mayor's got to go, but I wanted the mayor to address Bradley Payne, and our relationship with Bradley Payne, so that all the members of council know.
Yeah, so we, of course, had a little bit higher level of comfort when we were informed that he was working with Bradley Payne, because we've worked with them. They've done all of our city note financing and bonds recently, Progress Parkway, and some of the other projects in the city. So I know with Andrew and some with his team out there, it certainly kind of changed the dynamic and feel of the financial piece with their involvement because of what they've been able, we have a working relationship with them for so many years. So just don't go out and steal our team, because we need them to continue to do our financing, because they do a very nice job. And then, as Rich said, I do have to leave to throw out the first pitch for things this evening, so make sure you pray for me. I don't injure anyone or myself, so I'd hate to blow my back out again doing that. But I will confirm, you know, Dan, what Eduardo said, we all thought on the administration side as well that this thing was dead, because it had been so long and COVID was going on. And when we got the email from Eduardo, it was kind of like, oh, you know, okay, he's raring to go. And COVID, he says, COVID is gone. And I know coming from Florida, it was a little different down there. You didn't have nearly the pause we did, but we all thought it was dead too for, I don't know how many months, 6, 8, maybe more. All right. Any questions before I take off? I've got a couple of minutes before I have to, anything for me, I guess. Okay, well, I'll put it in Brent and the city administrator's stead while I depart then, so.
Give him the high heat.
All right.
Don't short arm it.
I'll do better than Dr. Fauci throwing that picture.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
On video.
Oh, probably will be.
Does any member of council have any more questions for Councilman Gillig?
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Mr. Hernando, for being here, and also for your dedication to the project over the last 4 years. I would like to say, and I don't know if I'm mistaken in this regard, and nor do I blame you for this, I'm not entirely certain. I was of the understanding that we were hitting a pause button, and that nothing was being done on the project during these 6 months. I was under the impression that we were just kind of looking at a 6-month extension of the project as is. But regardless of that, the thing that I would just love to remind my fellow council members of is we have a developer with Mr. Hernando who's invested quite a bit of time and energy and capital towards this project. And as of right now, we have no one else that I'm aware of that's lining up to do any sort of similar developments. So really, when we're looking at an extension, I don't know what we would potentially have to lose at this point. Have I been a little bit frustrated that it hasn't progressed as much as it should have? Certainly. I'm sure Mr. Hernando shares those same frustrations. But Eduardo, if I may ask, were we to look at this extension, what would the outline be? Like, what would your next 5 steps be, perhaps from July to September?
Very good question. Just going back to developers being lined up, I refer to the first comments I made about the lots, way back. Because this came up in one of the meetings a while back about the lots. And, now it's taken 4 years, maybe 3 years, or maybe 2 years, 2.5 years, right? After people saw the vision, and I don't know if you know Ms. Kears, great family, great business. And when I mentioned early on, this project really makes sense if I can assemble that one small piece in between, which is a private deal, has nothing to do with this contract. And it was kind of, a couple people chuckled saying, good luck dealing with Mrs. Kears, right? And so, amazing woman, and I was able to assemble that vision with having a complete full riverfront, connection. So if you see that, and you've seen this probably in other parts of the country and the world where these kind of urbanized products have been put together with the hotel and the apartments and everything. And so after the conclusion of the housing study, where, as I mentioned, at first people were like, this is too big, this is no way, this is not for Tiffin, it's gonna be some sitting albatross, I think words have been used. And I said, no, I believe in it, here's the numbers, and here's why I'm doing this project. And the housing study confirmed that it's not only my project, but 2 of these projects can be built in Tiffin, right, because of demand. So it's a little bit easier for people today to be the Monday morning quarterbacks, to say, wow, oh my God, this project's, $40 million, and oh my God, the land, we're selling it for dirt cheap, But you have to see the process of getting to where you are mentally and the community is, where they're saying, wait a second, we're only selling it for this amount of money, Where at the time, I'm saying, wow, can I negotiate that price down, There's no guarantee that anything's gonna happen in Tiffin. You gotta get entitlement, you gotta get financing. All the risk is on me, So today, now there may be people very much waiting or even pushing you or saying, I wanna do the project, get rid of this guy who's from Miami, he's not even from here, and why are we giving him the opportunity, right? When 4 years ago, nobody was believing in Tiffin like I was for this project, right? And there should have been people lined up 4 years ago, if it helps put a perspective on it. At that time is when people should have been lining up, bidding for that land, because it's riverfront land, okay? And at that time, nobody cared. Nobody was coming in front of you guys saying, I want to do a really nice project. Nobody was contacting the mayor, and I know someone did, 3 or 4 years before me, but this land has been available, if you calculate the time, 7 years or 8 years before, including this moment in time. So it's just perspective to kind of help answer your question and give perspective to everybody today, considering what I'm requesting, you know? So in development, traditionally, if you've seen, you know, some vacant land, and I know you've seen Tiffin develop over the years too, and a cow field now has a beautiful development of homes or a community and so what happens is the developer with the vision and all the risk, okay, very important point, has to be the first one. And then all of a sudden the value's there. So what we're doing is we're creating value by presenting a vision, by spending money to create plans, because there were plans created to go in front of the Board of Appeals. You have to have plans, you have to have setbacks, so money was spent for that, okay? So that had to be done to be able to get entitlement. So all these things take place, and that process of achievements starts bringing value for the property and for the land up. And this is the kind of the procedure in general. So, you know, going to your question or your point, how do I feel? Why don't you repeat the specific question you want me to address, or?
Yeah, with regards to, you know, if we were able to grant the extension, which, you know, to be frank, for me, it doesn't sound like an unreasonable request. What would your next steps be, you know, after that was in place?
Right, so I think you said 4 or 5 steps.
Yeah.
So very specifically, there are steps. As we run parallel with, you know, finishing up financing and underwriting and things that we're already running through, again, with the authority of the bank to be released today. That, again, there's certain things along the way that you could see, hey, no bank's gonna allow their name to be public if they've already gone so far. You follow? So again, these are the types of things you're gonna see. You're gonna see me go in front of the Architectural Review Board. But before I go to Architectural Review Board, we've got to now take all the entitlements we have and go and develop each of the buildings. So, you know, even to the level of the condominium, to get pre-sales, I have to be able to show somebody and sit in front of them and say, which unit you want. This unit on first floor is X dollars, but the same unit on the corner on the 4th floor is X dollars. So at that point, in order to show that, you have to have that building actually built or, you know, created by an architect. Not just renderings and setback footprints, which is what we did for the entitlement, just to give you a difference of perspective. So in order to get to Architectural Review Board, there's a critical path that's a lot more than 5 steps to get to the point where we can get in front of Architectural Review Board. And that's the #1 objective now going into next phase. And that's another objective that actually is money spent, that if anything happens, is lost 100%, like it was in addressing your pause. So the question about pausing, it was, in our perspective, it was, we're stopping continued progress was the #1 thing the mayor and David wanted. And I felt completely comfortable with that language. And remember, that's where the risk is. If I didn't have continued progress, where in a month or 2 I could show, well, here's what we've accomplished, they could question, well, you haven't accomplished anything in 60 days. You're not doing anything. We're gonna revoke the agreement. They had the right to do that. So it was very powerful language that for 4 years, here we are still. To give you, again, just to give you, you have your own police out there, right? You know, policing the project, where you don't have to. And you also have people on this side that have honored this side of the agreement. And together, we're here today. You know, that's what, so again, just pieces that you're kind of assembling to reach this point today. So if it's 4 or 5 steps, I would say that the reaching Architectural Review Board is our first and foremost goal. And that's probably about 10, 15 steps to go to that next level. If that helps you, that's a very specific thing we want to do, we want to accomplish, and we'll need to accomplish as well during this next few months.
When do you anticipate possibly opening the sales office for the condominiums?
Great question. The objective is credibility to the condo, right? So what's credibility is, look across the street. We just broke ground on the hotel and the apartments. We're going to break ground on this once we have the 50%. So the timing is break ground on hotel and multifamily, open up the sales office, and then at that point begin the pre-sale. So that people really believe in the project and will believe that the condos will actually be built. Hopefully that answers that question.
It does, thank you.
Councilman Perkins.
Thank you. I let everyone go before me on purpose. I wanted to hear the questions they had and hear your answers to those, of course. I've been a part of some larger projects and, around places that started new businesses and such. But I wanted to say thank you. It's a pretty big undertaking that I don't know if a lot of people really realize what all goes into it. It's a blood, sweat, and tears kind of thing. So I'm 100% supportive of an extension, especially considering COVID was about 12 to 14 months of just shutdown. Can some work be done? Of course. Can you get as far ahead as you need? No. We all know that, especially with the market fluctuations right now are just insane. So I'm completely supportive because everything that you want to do is things that we need. I am 100% in favor of more housing. That's been my number one goal. I want to see housing, and I know there's other companies doing the same thing. Retail space is fantastic, especially in downtown, and that entire lot over there needs life brought into it. So, thank you. I hope that we can get you the extension you need, and you can push as hard as possible to move as fast as possible to get these things done. So,
Thank you for those words.
Thank you.
It's definitely nice to hear, and I know everyone's been very appreciative to date, and I can tell you the community, like I said, when I'm out, people that I don't know have been extremely appreciative and want the project. Downtown is a block off, and so the amount of people we're going to be bringing into downtown, it's going to help the Main Street, it's going to help the historic part. That's where we're going to put the sales office in the historic, right in the historic, so that's going to drive people to that area across from Empire. It's a great project, and so the why that I mentioned early on is what fuels, fuels me, and wanting the desire to continue. And so it's very much still fueled, and that's why we're here, to take it to the next level and get it finished.
okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am supportive of the extension as well, but I do have one item that I would like to be included with the extension, is I would request an in-person report to City Council every 90 days. If you would like me to make a motion, I will so move.
Want to wait.
I'd like to ask a few questions just to clarify some information. The project, I understand, is a hotel, a condominium, restaurant, and retail business. And there are a couple different lots. Just to make it clear, the condominium would be on Lot 4, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and that includes, I understand, a restaurant?
Yeah, so even on the condo building, there on the ground floor, there's a retail commercial space to be rentable to, say, coffee shop or different shops. So you're going to be able to go along the ground floor of the condo also, even though it's a final home destination for people. The ground floor will be open and common for public use.
And Lot 6 is where the hotel would be located?
Correct.
And that would include a restaurant also, you mentioned
Correct.
that.
Correct. The lot.
Will there also be retail business there?
Again, that's part of the design. We have to deal with the design issues there because we have the lobby, we have the lobby area, but there is a design already in place to put the restaurant, and then the restaurant being available to the public and out, serving to the front, to the riverfront area. So somebody could walk along the river and go into the restaurant.
Okay, you mentioned Premier Bank as the, on board with the condo under certain terms, but they have not given you a written loan commitment yet, is that correct?
No, not yet.
Okay. They are not going to finance the construction of the hotel, correct?
Correct.
You've not mentioned to us yet the name of the lender for the hotel. Do you have a lender for the hotel project?
Yes, we do. They're out of Chicago. They haven't authorized me to release their name, which I could at some point very near future. But the plan would be to have financing in place. We've gone far enough along where they were So Tiffin is a small community, as you all know. Their concern was, how do I exit a bridge type of setup, which is what they are. They're going to be a bridge where they're a little bit more aggressive in the market where hospitality financing doesn't exist at this moment. And so my push is I want to get the hotel done as immediately as possible and break ground for the hotel as well within the timeframes we're talking about. So what they wanted was they wanted some assurance for as much as we can give them. And we actually had a call maybe 2 weeks ago where Premier Bank and the lender for the hotel were actually on a call. And what they're doing is looking for an exit to be refinance their position out once the hotel stabilizes. So there's a lot of things going on, obviously, behind the scenes. But, and then the Premier Bank actually issued a letter to the secondary lender of their level of interest to refinance the hotel once stabilization comes and say within 3 years. So there's a lot of technical things going on that are happening. So, and obviously my confidence in that we're going to have the hotel being able to be coming out of the ground in June 22.
Okay, so there'll be separate construction lenders for Lot 4 and Lot 6.
Yes, at this moment, and then eventually there'll be one lender for everything, yes.
Right, right. And so there'll be separate loan commitment letters from each of those institutions, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The schedule, the timetable that you gave us for closing, which is the acquisition of the property from the city, and the for the construction next June, that is for the hotel, correct?
The closing is for the hotel and the condo site both together.
Okay, but the construction for the hotel is what you intend to start in June of next year?
That's correct. That's
The
correct.
condo construction will not be for some future time, because I think you indicated that the pre-sale would begin once the hotel construction begins.
That is correct.
Correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand the timetable and making sure that the city council, these are questions that if they haven't asked, I think they should ask and should understand the answers, I should say.
It's a great sequence of questions that you're asking, and it's important. So the more information you have, the better for me. I want you to be informed. That's why, obviously, I've given you more detail probably than you expected. But the more educated you are, the more you can understand where we are in the process and understanding the whole project as a whole. So the condo piece of it will be kind of almost a continued progress. You know, the point of keeping my feet to the fire, which David wanted the language in, to make sure you're building and then you're finished with construction, is all that process, you know?
Yeah, the hotel construction, the loan for the hotel, what sort of timetable do you anticipate for the city to receive word and understand that you have a firm loan commitment from the lender for the hotel project?
We think we're talking 30, 45 days. I mean, we're in a,
From today?
yes,
30 to 45 days.
yes.
And that's in that time frame. At the end, you expect to receive a written loan commitment?
Yes, it's possible, yeah. So when I say honor before, remember we keep using those terms, and if you remember back to March 2020 meeting, where we were talking about kind of critical path to getting the alley vacation in preparation for voting on that, and then closing. It's all the sequence we were kind of putting together, if you remember. We were assembling that. So we're gonna have to go, once we get the next step, we'll have to sit back down and go through that critical path of getting the alleys done and obviously moving forward as we, you know, work together on the next
And do you expect the loan commitment to have a date that it will not expire, that will allow you to close well into next year?
The objective, again, going back to your question, the objective that we're looking for is to close as soon as possible. Of course, there'll be some limitations to, hey, let's close next week, right? Because there's some things to have to vote on. But our objective would be to close by December 31. That's what we're trying to hope for. We're shooting for. Those are our targets. But I'm incorporating, you know, June, I'm incorporating December, I'm incorporating, you know, some potential time in there that's gonna, you know, keep us from being able to do that. And so that's why I'm asking doing the February or do one date, just one whole day for everything and keep it simple for the June 2022 timeframe.
When you break ground for the hotel, how long do you expect it will take to complete the construction of that part of the project?
100-room hotel usually is
I mean, you're talking about 8, 9 months. It's not a really long process. But, you know, we can always add a couple of months to any kind of time frame you're looking at in general with the climate that we're in right now. Again, we're running into some unknowns with pressures of material and labor. So we're having issues with labor in restaurants and labor in retail right now, you know. So these pressures, I think, between now and June 22, I'm adding a little bit of squeezing room in there to give us some extra time to kind of let these things iron out with labor costs. I mean, labor being available as well as construction material costs.
For the condominium, which is a separate timetable for construction, when did you expect that to commence?
I'm hoping we can get from summer to fall of 2022, have the pre-sales in place, and we would want to have construction begin of spring 23, summer 23.
And how long of construction will it take for the condominium?
Probably, I would say about 16, 18 months.
So that's a longer time.
Longer, yeah,
construction.
much longer, yes. Think of it as a custom home versus a home that's being built in a community that's basically cookie cutter. There's a difference in time frames for delivery, a custom home and finishes compared to something that's being done kind of cookie cutter. That's really the perspective on that, as far as time frames.
And the Premier Lending, they will not be ready to close the loan for the condo until after the 50% presale have been met. That's the condition? It's not a written loan commitment, but that's the indication that when their participation would allow.
Right, but remember, it's a moving process. So we open up sales office, and in the first 2 or 3 weeks, I mean, you could sell out everything in the first month, or it could take 6 months, right? If you're selling 2 or 3 units a month, or you can start predicting, okay, here's a path, here's what's going on. We expect to do pre-sales fairly quickly, and we'll be prepared to close and be able to start construction because we'll have a contractor in place. We'll have the building pretty much, the design's already going to be there. So everything will be finished to be able to break ground very swiftly. What we don't want to do is get caught in a situation where we have to break ground, then we're in the middle of winter. So that's really more of a management and timing. So if you imagine summer, we do pre-sales in the first 2 or 3, call it the first 90 days, okay? And we're able to turn around and get into the ground before winter and have potentially 3 or 4 months and not have to, at least close in. So there's a logistics issue there. Or, hey, let's just wait for spring to break ground. So that's really what we're talking about as far as answering your question for breaking ground, right? You're after a date, you're trying to.
Well, we have a lot of dates in the agreement.
Right,
and
right.
so now I'm trying to absorb the information to determine, based on council's questions and their expectations, what should be the appropriate timing for any extension that they may approve. For Premier Bank, their closing may occur anytime from late summer 2022 to into 2023, is what you're saying, because you may not start construction until then, correct?
Right, so I think a reasonable construction break ground date, if that's what you're looking for, would be, call it June of 2023. That would be a reasonable, again, we're pushing as fast as possible, but reasonableness would be a good date, a strong date for us to have in place, a date that I would be willing to, agree to and sign. And if we can do it sooner, we will.
Okay,
We absolutely
and that
will.
could be even a year later than the first part, the project with the hotel.
Correct.
Okay.
But on that piece, we have clearly, we can clearly display continued progress on that. How are we doing with sales? Did we open the sales office? So talking about what are the 5 next steps? So on the condo, what are the steps? Did we open the sales office? How's pre-sales going? We can take a temperature on how things are going along the way. So even if we did a 90-day, hey, let's hear it firsthand, what's going on, we could do something, which I love. I love communication. It keeps everybody in tune to what's going on. So that could be the condo kind of status, close on the project, start hotel, and then here's the condo, pre-sales the sales office opens, pre-sales start. How are we doing with that? It could sell out in a month. And this happens often in communities or in situations that the demand is so high. It could take longer because it's Tiffin and we're not really sure, but we all really believe in the project and believe we'll be able to get the 50 people interested. There's two components of the condo which I think are relevant for all of you to understand. In the case of a condo project, is you're actually buying at a 20% discount of the end retail value of that condo. Okay, so there's many investors. It's not just the end users. There's many investors that will come in as buyers, and we don't classify a buyer as an investor or a buyer. A buyer is a buyer. Doesn't matter who they are. Okay, so there's many investors that do this all over the place. So they know the condo will be built. They know their prices say it's going to be $200,000. So their price is $180,000. This is for examples purposes. When that building gets built, now that condo is worth $200,000. And but they put the deposit as their contract, and we're allowing investors to come in and buy units. It's an incentive, so the 20% discount is an incentive for the pre-sale process to function, okay? Once the building is built, it's a lot different than going into a community where you're looking at homes, a developer, or I don't know if you've ever gone into anything like that, but if you see houses being built and your house isn't built, it's different than going down the street on Sycamore and seeing the house built, and you walk in, you see the kitchen, you visualize yourself living in the home. Some people don't have vision, so they're not willing to buy something that's not built. But once you can go up the elevator, go into the beautiful lobby, go up the elevator to the 3rd floor, and look out at a sunset and say, okay, this condo costs now $200,000 or $250,000, because that could happen. That investor just made whatever that difference is, because it's their unit. They'll just be forced to close at $180,000. So don't be surprised, is all I want to say. Don't be surprised that we get 50 units pre-sold fairly swiftly, okay? I am confident of that. That's why I'm willing to do that. But we can't commit ourselves to that hope, the assumption. So that's why I'm saying, hey, we want to look at June 23. If we need a date certain, we should put that kind of date in there and put the proper expectation potentially. But it could be sooner, and that's what our hope is, that we will do sooner.
Okay, good, thank you.
To Ben's question about the steps, we know you got to go through all the steps to get to actual construction. So to Steve's question about reporting, are we talking about in person or?
In person, report to city council every 90 days.
Would that be doable?
I love it. I actually have no problem with it. We've been doing basically monthly emails to the team. I think it's important that everybody has communication at this stage, because this is now getting serious, right? So it will keep you guys, since you're representing the community, if somebody is asking you, you'll have the ability to give answers, and I think it would be helpful. So I have no problem with that at all. And in person, I'm here always anyway, so it won't matter. So
Be here more often.
absolutely, yes. Absolutely. So yes. So if I may, just one question back to the council, really related to your question, Steve, which is the overall. Do we want more of an umbrella date to just, which I welcome, or is that something that do a June 2022, June 30, 2022 timeframe, and just include everything in that date, or did you want to separate with 2 dates and more of a, I don't know, but I'm open to that. That was.
Councilman Perkins.
Well, I would think that no matter what you think, it's always going to take longer. Doesn't matter.
It always
You're going to
does.
say June, it's going to be August. And that's with anybody and any construction. So I think we're better off going a little longer than a little shorter. I mean, we're not losing anything by doing it. You're still investing money.
Absolutely.
And if you're doing every 90 days coming in here giving reports, it changes the perception of the project. not just to us, but to the public.
Sure.
And it shows that you're invested in a different way. I think that would do nothing but help, so.
I would agree.
Councilman Gilly.
So it looks like Mr. Hernando's original request was February 28th of 2022, being the extension. Councilman Leopard, you seem to say maybe June 30th of 2022 might be a better option.
I'll tell you why I think it is.
Oh, I'm certain you're right.
I signed a contract last month to have a garage built. I wanted it stick-built, too much money. So I went with metal. Signed the contract, next day, metal went up 38%. I've been over a month just waiting for my excavation contractor to get in.
Right.
But council, what I hear is, I hear that there are two projects, and it's an overall project that you've requested, but there are certain buildings on the different lots, and that there are different lenders, there are different timetables. Each can have the continued progress requirements, like Eduardo had just said, that he would be open to. And so maybe they need to have different tracks, is what I'm thinking.
I agree with
That maybe in the best interest of the city too, because there are possibilities. You know, the hope is the pre-sale will happen, but you don't know that for sure. So maybe they're on the separate tracks that the dates that you've talked about.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think we're looking at two different.
Yeah, for sure.
Councilman Perry.
Yeah, a couple questions. First one, actually for Brent. Mr. Hernando said he asked for a year, and you thought 6 months was a better extension. I was just curious on why 6 months over a year?
I think he was referring to the context of the COVID pandemic. And when that was discussed back in June, there were a lot of 6-month timeframes, state law. In fact, and I guess probably as an attorney, I was thinking that the state of Ohio had extended open meeting law for 6 months, and we're going to revisit it. And no one knew for sure how long this would be, and a shorter time frame seemed to be in the best interest. And I did recommend that at a meeting. It's accurate, because I didn't think a full year, because it may not have taken that long to get back on track.
Sure.
So that was my thought process that Eduardo was talking about. It is accurate.
Cool. And then I had a question about the condos as well. Say somebody does put money down for a condo, and what if it doesn't take off like we think it does? Say we only have 10% and we're sitting in 2023, and somebody wants their money back. Is that possible with this, with your structure, how you're structuring things?
Great question. We won't be sitting in 2023. I can guarantee you that, because we're going to know fairly soon, fairly swiftly, how it's received. Okay, I think it's going to be, and I want to open up the process a little bit. If you imagine you have people moving into town for new jobs in the healthcare system that can't find housing. The former CEO, amazing woman that I know she moved on. I met with her privately early on, and she was running into these issues. Bringing people in, bringing professionals in was very difficult for them to have housing in Tiffin. You have people living in Findlay that work in Tiffin. So if you pull 2 or 3 people from in all these different situations, 50 people is a very quick number. So I say that's the context of what I'm going to say. We're going to know fairly quickly that the project is going to go or not. And I say first 90 days, first 30 days, it's going to be critical timing to know. So I say we're not going to get to 23, because if it doesn't go, we're going to know also. And then I'll be back and then I'll say, hey, look, we still need housing, okay? The condo is not going to be the right project or right process, but I'm willing to invest now in new architecture plans, okay? And do some kind of another apartment building or some other type of rental on the site, and build another 100-unit apartments or something of course, the mayor and you as the visionaries of the community would want. Especially with the housing demands now, there's a plan B, in my mind. Again, you brought it up, and it's a great place to be, to have a plan B and a plan C, kind of figure out where things go. But having another 100 people with rentals in downtown would be extremely helpful to downtown businesses and I think create the environment that we want with job creation and income tax for the city. So that would be plan B. So I would be back saying, hey, we've only sold, 10 units using your number in 90 days. We're not sure we're going to get to the 50 at this point. Let's go another couple months. Let's really allow fall to come through. I don't know if you've ever done the math, but I have, okay, to even start this project. If you think of how many alumni there are for TU, how many alumni there is for Heidelberg alone, that when people retire, they want to be close to their alma mater. And that's an option that now opens up. So if you think of an investor or buyer from all these markets, and it's only 2 or 3 from every market, you can see why I think 50 is just a no-brainer. It's why it's so easy in my view. But a lot of them don't come back till fall, or so we'll want to give it the time to get there if we don't get it early on. But I believe that we will. But if we don't, believe me, I'll be the first one in front of you saying it's not going to work. Here's what we want to do, and let's keep this vision going. But let's do multifamily instead.
So those people, like those 10 families, would get their money back.
Oh, yeah, of course. Sorry, I didn't get that yet. They would have a full refund, and that's how it's set up.
Not saying you, but you do hear about some horror stories where a developer comes in, they do the non-refundable, they promise these condos, they get halfway up, then they skip town. Not saying you, but these are things that we also as a council have to take into account as well.
What do you mean by halfway up?
Like the financing falls through. So they charge all these people a non-refundable deposit, financing falls through, whatever falls through, and then, they're gone, so.
What do you mean by halfway up, or what does that mean?
Like construction starts, or even if construction doesn't start, these people are signing a contract saying, this is non-refundable, I know I'm not getting it back, and they're really buying the vision, right, of what you're selling them. So, I just want to ensure that Tiffin people will, if you do go to this path with you, that they're not locked in, they can get their money back if something were to.
Well, every agreement, let's go through this a little more in detail.
Right.
First of all, we're not Bush League operators here, okay? This is a legal contract. Somebody's actually putting deposit down. There's a legal agreement that their attorney is going to review, and that legal agreement will be a state of Ohio legal agreement, okay? They're buying a home like you would be buying a home, okay? There's money going in escrows. There's procedures for all that we don't have to worry about, because legally the system encapsulates everything that would be in that procedure or in that process, right? Secondly, if we reach the 50%, okay? The contractor is going to be, I'm requiring that the contractor has a bond. So just by having a completion bond, which it costs more money in construction, that bond is an insurance policy that once we break ground, the contractor will finish the project. That's the first step, okay? Another insurance policy. Second step, once the lender finances the construction and starts the construction, they're into this loan that until it's actually built, they can't recover their money. So nothing's going to start halfway and end halfway. And I've put in place certain mitigation items that are going to assure people of that once we can get to break ground, that building's getting built, okay? But as far as escrows, hopefully that answers your question. As far as agreements and as far as the process of somebody putting a deposit down, that's all going to be a legal process that each buyer will go through. Each buyer, like yourself, if you're buying a home or anything, you would have your ability to legally be protected as well. So hopefully that helps you in that step.
Councilwoman Boyle.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm all for development in Tiffin. Actually, I live downtown. I love it. But I guess I'm curious, and you talk about the investors that you're very familiar with in your other projects, things like that. What is your marketing strategy for selling these pre-sales? I'm aware of other developers in town who have similar ideas of, establishing condos or other housing, and they have established relationships here. So I'm curious as to when you open your office here, really what is going to be your kind of plan, your marketing plan to get these sales completed?
Well, first of all, I believe there's buyers that are outside this market. Like I mentioned, you have alumni that are potentially looking to retire into the community and that will want to have their home here next to their university, whichever it is. This is a common fact that goes on nationwide. I mean, people that, I have a great relationship in South Carolina, Clemson, and people have homes, second homes, and right near Clemson to watch games or be associated to all the sports that go on in their alma mater. But this is a fact for all universities in general. So I believe there's a buyer in, think about how many thousands of students are graduating every year from Heidelberg and from TU together, right? Now go back 30, 40 years, 20 years, where potentially somebody would want to have a unit here for themselves because they love Tiffin or they love their university or for whatever reason. So out of the 50 units, how many is that? Out of the thousands of people, year over year of alumni available to get potentially either a letter in the mail or that are coming into town that are now seeing this possibility. So if it's 50, is that just 10 people out of thousands? I believe it's that more than 10, but I would say if it's 10 or 15. If you own a condo, we're going to allow for you to rent that unit. It'll have to be 1 year. We're not doing Airbnb. There's people who want actually make the condo their home. There'll be people from the community. So those are another buyer we talked about earlier. The empty nester in Tiffin, okay, that has a big home that either owns a business in Tiffin or has family members that live in Tiffin, okay? I had somebody that wanted to buy a condo that lives in Arizona that actually, her mom's here. And when she's here, she doesn't want to live or stay with the mom. She wants to have her own place. So she was inquiring about buying a condo directly, and she doesn't live here. So there's people that have, again, going back to the empty nester, that are living in the big house right now. They're tired of the lawns and the upkeep of a big house. They'd rather just have something more simple. So how many buyers are those? Is that 5 people? Is that 10 people out of an entire community of Tiffin that would want a condo? So if you start assembling all these different buyers, you're reaching them differently in a marketing plan, right? But it all comes down to the common denominator, is living downtown in our beautiful historic downtown Main Street and downtown Tiffin. Where you just said it. I live downtown and I love living downtown, How many people want to live downtown right now that we don't even know that want to live downtown, but there's no option for them? I believe the number's much, much greater than 50. And again, it's hard to know anything because this is all unknown territory we're all going into, And that's what, I guess that if you go from the very beginning of nobody wanted these lots to now everyone believes in the project. I mean, think about our conversations right now. Everybody believes this actually could be very successful now. Early on, it was, how do you know how do you know anyone wants to live downtown? Or how do you know, we didn't have the facts we know now, right? So all the actionable intelligence that we have today is profoundly powerful for us to be confident, and at least me in the project specifically, to say, I believe we're going to get 50 pre-sales between investors, between people outside the area, people from Findlay that want to live in Tiffin. People are invested in Findlay. They're going to want to invest in Tiffin now, seeing what's going on in Tiffin, you see? So I believe that. It's just hard to know because we've never experienced it before. Plan B, if it doesn't happen, I'll be back and say, plan A didn't work. Are you interested in me investing in Plan B? And that'll be your decision. You know what I mean? That'll be because we're going to change. Okay, look, condo didn't work. We thought it would work, and we didn't. I'm going to lose a lot of money on the plans, but I don't care. It's still a great opportunity to build more units and complete the vision, and we will. So, if there was another condo like this built in Tiffin, we wouldn't be having this conversation because, it already had been tested. So there's a lot of testing and new ground we're going to cross together.
Does any other member of council have a question?
I have a question for the law director. Are you suggesting that we now divide the purchase agreements up 2 ways?
You mean 2 different transactions?
Correct.
I mean, that's based on the discussion that I've heard from council and from the developer. it would seem to make sense to me to do that because they're clearly on different timetables.
What about the deposit? Would you still want to hold them both at $1,000?
Well, there is a $1,000 deposit in escrow, and so I would imagine that it would just remain in escrow after the first closing, and it would be available for the second closing. It would make sense to me. This is my impression from your question now on top of my head. but it makes sense.
I just feel that, you know, even several years ago, we were on the short end of the stick, you know, requesting just $1,000 deposit on a $267,000
Well, you could.
property.
You could require, because now, you know, you're allowing certain flexibility and for the developer, you could require some form of a higher deposit, one or both of these.
The way I look at it, as far as the deposit goes, we know that Engineer Watson has spent a great deal of amount of time on this, and yourself, I know that you have spent more time than we'll ever probably figure. $1,000 just doesn't seem like enough to me. I'll leave that up to council, other members of council.
So are we talking, putting the hotels at the February date and then the condos at the June date? Or do you mean both projects at June, but separately listed?
Splitting them in 2 dates. That's what I was gathering, correct? 'Cause
So
we're
we would do
talking a year
February
di-
for the
we're talking
motel?
a year difference, are we not?
June 22 and June 23.
Yeah, I think that really what I'm hearing is the dates would be relevant for next year. First half of the year would be closing and commence construction for the hotel, but the condo would be closing and commence construction in early '23.
What had been expected was closing both, the closing that I'm referencing is closing on both lots on, you know, February 28, 2022, and then the construction dates be relevant to June 21 and then June 23.
June 22.
So, I'm sorry, 22.
Well, I think maybe the actual
22.
sale of the property should be separated too, not only.
If that's now, you know, if that's now a different line of conversation. So if you wanted to now, okay, you know what, it looks like they are to not close on the condo site, then that would be something that we could.
Right, we have defined amounts in the appraisals, you know, they are 145,000 for the lot 6 and 122,000 for lot 4.
The only thing is that now you're entering into renegotiating an agreement that's already been in place and negotiated. So it's, and now starting a new agreement, in essence, correct?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here, you know, all these terms were not contemplated in 2018, so we're discussing it based on what we know now.
Right.
And the information that you provided and the expectations of council and because this is, they're representatives of the community, and the community has certain expectations for improvement, development of the downtown area, generating income, jobs, cultural improvements, many things. And so they have to look at it now with kind of fresh eyes, given all the circumstances. And so I think that's why I'm making these statements that I am to council. And I know it's awkward, but this is democracy in action. You know, this is my public client.
Of course.
And then council acts at public meetings and can't discuss these outside of the public meeting. So that's why we are having this kind of open discussion, so we're transparent to the whole community.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Other than changing the date and however you want to work that out, I have no problem with leaving the escrow where it is. Let's quit messing with it and just try to get this thing moving, basically.
I don't know that increasing escrow is going to move this project along.
We
any
don't,
faster,
we don't see it anyways, it's in escrow, so
Yeah,
I'd say just leave it alone.
okay.
I think it's more of a focus issue, isn't it? We want to know that we're focused on one topic and one project up until X date, and then as soon as that completion's done, we know that the focus is moving on, you know.
Anyone else? I'm gonna break protocol here a little bit. We've got some people who've sat through this meeting from the general public. Does anybody have a question for Eduardo germane to this project that they wanna ask or a comment they wanna make? Mr. Herrig? I'd like to limit it to 5 minutes, so,
Oh, I won't need that long.
okay.
I know it killed the cat, and I have nothing against cats, but I'm a curious person, so I've been trying to follow things with the riverfront development, even though to some extent, you know, it doesn't, I'm not a potential resident or anything, but I appreciate the opportunity to come here today and to hear Mr. Hernando give his updates, because my attempts to get updates in the past, as Councilman Perry alluded to, have not been fully successful. And following up on what I believe it was Councilman Perkins said about, I hope from here on that the city administration, whether it comes from council, the mayor, whoever, that you'll be more open and give more information to the public. You know, we're stakeholders in what's going on down there, and you people are, we've elected you to take care of our interests, but that doesn't mean we've given up our ability and our right to know what's going on. So from here on, I just ask that the public be kept a little more up to speed on just where things happen, you know, what has happened in the last month or 90 days. Or I'm not asking for a daily or a weekly, I don't want, but just, you know, keep us in the loop, please. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. Mr. Kirschner.
Hi, John Kirschner. So I've been following this project from the beginning, and some interesting things have come to pass as I've been doing my due diligence. A little background is that I was a commercial banker for 20 years. And so in that process, I was able to finance projects like this in Columbus, Ohio, and Florida as well. So I'm very familiar with the process that Mr. Hernando is talking about that he has to go through. However, it seems as though to me, some of the things that we're talking about based on the due diligence originally I'm a little confused, and maybe you can help me out with the numbers that I hear. So I hear that the housing study had 500 units that could be twice as much today. Now, I'm not saying that there's not a need
You didn't say 500.
in Tiffin. What was the number?
440.
440. 440. Okay. So in the actual study, $200,000 or higher, the need in that study was 16 units. That 200 is the starting point, is that correct? So that's one of the things. So I hear these numbers being thrown out, and I'm not really sure who's doing the due diligence and fact checking behind said numbers. I heard $1 million in tax revenue. What I do know is that we're offering a 15-year tax abatement for the real estate, where no real estate taxes will be paid on the project. So I don't know where I guess what as a citizen, what I'm more interested in, some meat behind the numbers, because he's an excellent speaker. He promotes very well. But what I heard today was that he, in fact, is not a developer and has never developed a project. And in the Architectural Board of Review meeting, I heard him say, especially one of this magnitude. And so that's concerning. I am aware that he was involved in a project similar to this one. And I spoke with the mayor and some city council members there, which was very concerning because that project did not come to fruition. It was in Hendersonville, North Carolina. So there were a lot of things that bothered me about how this project was going from we're gonna give the land, but no due diligence was done behind the project. So what I heard today was that the first project does not have financing in place. Right? So we have a developer with no experience and no financing is in place for hotels. And I heard a lot about the condo project, but that's 3 and 4 years away. So as a banker, what you do is you finalize everything and then you give a commitment letter or a letter of intent, right? And so now we haven't seen any of the letters of intents from any bankers or any investors. He also said that he was the sole owner and investor, right? Is that correct? So there is no equity partner locally, currently. One of those is not on board, is that correct? So he did state that there was just one person. I'm not trying to attack you here at all. I'm just trying to.
You absolutely are.
I'm just trying to get the facts as I understand them, and I see them, and I don't want city council to move forward without understanding, and I don't know what everybody's background is in real estate and real estate development, but a lot of these things to me don't ring true as what your concern was, is that if the project does start and does not get completed, right? And so we've seen condo projects like that. And just like COVID, in Florida, we lost hundreds and hundreds of homes that had deposits on them because the financial epidemic of 2007, right? And those did lose their deposits because they are non-refundable. Now they're guaranteed, but they are non-refundable. And the other concern is on the condo side is that investors come in and purchase them. At the bank we were at, we didn't allow that as a pre-sale as before. So I guess my concern is that all of these things that I've researched and looked at throughout the period of time are not really being expressed to council. And I felt as a citizen of Tiffin, somebody that's has been excited and involved in downtown Tiffin and is actually doing some revitalization on the Frost Parkway area as well, I felt the need to share with everybody what I've found and what I see. So I am for development. Mr. Hernando and I have met on numerous occasions, very pleasant, very enjoyable conversations. But my concern is the meat behind what you're being asked to do.
Thank you. One correction, John, on the taxes. He was talking about $1 million, 700,000 to $1 million over 10 years. That was income tax.
Right.
That wasn't real estate. That wasn't real estate.
That's where I would ask to say, okay, what jobs are being created through these hotels and restaurants? Do we have a letter of intent from the hotel that says you do in fact have this? And I've been watching it, so I haven't seen the letter from Choice Hotels and Ascend that says it is approved or any agreement between them. And just kind of those types of things throughout the process that as a lender, when I was in lending, that I would require to even have the discussion or letter of intent. There are no drawings. We don't have any physical drawings. There's no architectural drawings. There's no plans that are drawn by an architect. And I know that they take some time. And so, you know, an extension, albeit very aggressive, and I appreciate that because you want to get it done. I find it hard that we're not having this discussion again in another 12 months.
Thank you. Ralph?
Good evening. I have no agenda. I mean, honestly, my agenda is Tiffin, Ohio. I love Tiffin. I'm from here, and I'm not on the team. I get paid nothing for being here. Ed is my friend, and I can tell you he's been my friend for 30 years. And he used to hang out at Ralph's Maytag, quite honestly, back in the Heidelberg days. I didn't know his family owned multiple nursing homes, and he treated me like He treated me, my mom and my dad, myself, I mean, we have a small business, obviously a big business. And he is the real deal. I can tell you that. I'll put my name on that. And for whatever reason, there's jealousy in this town, which I don't understand. I thought I was doing the right thing by introducing people who I love. And for some reason, that hasn't worked out. Ed is here for the right reasons. I believe in him with all my heart. He's skipping this step now I haven't seen for a while because the guy's been beat up for 4 years. And this COVID thing has hurt all of us. But Tiffin does need housing. Thank you for saying that. Goodness gracious, he's the one taking all the risk. For goodness sakes, he's an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. He's got a lot of pressure on him, and I believe in him with all my heart. And I'm just saying, he is a real deal. He's asked for nothing from me, and I'm just proud to call him my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. Anyone else? Dr. Reeser.
Rick Reeser, as a business owner in Tiffin, I only have one concern, and I'd like you to think about it, and that is it's not whether or not Mr. Hernando can actually do the project or not, it's whether or not he should do it. And what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of small businessmen and women in Tiffin, Ohio. When he opens up a retail establishment in the basement or the first floor of this restaurant, coffee shops, we're going to be pinching quite a few of the smaller people in Tiffin, the bailiwicks, the little clothers in downtown Tiffin, maybe the Laird Arcade Brewing Company. There's going to be a lot of people that have already paid their due diligence and proven their love for downtown Tiffin that are going to be a little bit pinched. Not only he complained, he stated the fact that COVID, beat up all these businesses, and they did, and his and all the small businesses in Tiffin as well, which now we have an issue with employment. And he opens up this massive restaurant, retail shops. There's only so many people in Tiffin, Ohio. Employment, do we have enough employees? We're already hurting for employees in downtown Tiffin. Are we going to have enough employees? Are employees from downtown Tiffin going to be sucked away to go to the nice, beautiful new facility? So that's going to be an issue, and I just want you to think about that, as you're making a decision. Is, not whether or not he can do it, and it's going to be, something that's, makes Tiffin look, brighter, prettier, whatever. But is it going to protect? Can we protect the smaller people that have already, helped shoulder, the need for a larger business like this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Calnow.
Andrew Calnow. When was this first before the City Council? Autumn of 2018? I think it was, yeah. I really regretted at the time that I didn't step forward and, share some observations and reservations and some ideas for what I view as more successful routes of development of our downtown and community altogether. It was pretty clear to me that there was, this guy's a great salesman. And he's a good guy. I think I had drinks with you once and seemed to be a good guy and great salesman. It's a very ambitious plan. I would, hopefully some of you, all of you know something about me. I'm a businessman, a proven businessman, I think, in multiple endeavors. First commercial banking, then private equity for 25, 30 years with some successful funds. There are local people that have invested invested in them that can attest to that. And then came back to Tiffin to buy and turn around Cornerstone Company. And actually, I knew nothing about running a machinery company. I knew something about business, and I think things came out okay, if not very well, on that. And, you know, I found in the time coming back to Tiffin that I fell in love with the town and community from which I came, born and raised here. And without trying to make money and big development splashes, I've put a lot of personal money and time and effort to help revitalize this town. I think it has more legs to go. And some of what Eduardo proposes, I think is interesting. And I would like to see it happen, but it is a mega project. It is a big bang, build them, and they will come using OPM. Everybody here know what OPM is?
People's money. Other people's money.
Bingo. And it's okay. But you got to realize, you know, things are built on thin threads when, you know, you have a, you know, a web that is basically OPM. And that's okay if the city can protect itself. But when things fail, you know, who owns the land? And, you know, what has happened with any potentially non-development or problematic development? You know, the half-built sort of house or, you know, building or enterprise. You know, there's some downside here, not just upside. I think the council back in 2018 said, you know, and I talked to some of the people and some of the cheerleaders at the time, and, you know, boy, it's pretty, you know, this is like a dream. Well, you know, there's an old saying, if things are too good to be true, they, you know, usually are. Doesn't mean that Eduardo can't do something, but it's not organic. It's a big bang thing. It either happens or it doesn't happen. I, for one, am very, very proud of what this community has accomplished over the last 5 to 10 years. The mayor and city council and other people, I'd like to thank myself, David Zach, TSEP, Reineke's, a whole bunch of people. This gentleman that took a risk about starting a restaurant, good God, a fine dining restaurant in little old Tiffin, Ohio, which was, you know, really known for how many pizza parlors we can have. It actually is not true, the statements of nobody was interested in. It is true and not true. Let me restate that. That nobody was interested in parcel number 4 and 6. It was never presented to the market. There has been an important committee of TSEP that has presented, I believe, to the city council about this time. No, it would have been a little bit later in the summer. How should we take on big development projects or potential projects with city-owned property or county if it's county? And this committee, which the mayor was part of it, and a number of other people that you would all know and I think respect, we went out and talked to other towns and communities that were peer. And what we learned is that there are a couple of observations that seem to ring true, that when there's big development projects, you know, beware. It can be tough to pull off, and there can be some downside. Up in, what is it, Lorraine, that's not the right name, the community up in the Cleveland area, there's a great big hole in the ground that, you know, was a development project that's still there. We also learned in that committee, and I think, David, you can, you know, speak to this, that the way other communities go about development is to put out very thoughtfully crafted RFPs, requests for proposals, and having stipulations to it and also a process to it. Turning back the clock, I would have liked to have thought that there would be responses to that if we would have done it, and some locals and some out-of-town people probably would have stepped forward, but yes, you know, I guess we drove by the empty lot, 4 and 6, and knew that they were there, but, you know, wasn't really interested, or no, we weren't really knowledgeable that the city was interested in cutting a very sweet deal with anybody, maybe everybody. I have a, and if we had to do it again, and there's a question right now, because you know, there's multiple projects going on here. There's multiple real estate going on here. Could and should that be divided up to improve the success of good outcomes for the community? I would like you to think about that. And I would like to go further. I would like to propose that I will personally step forward and develop one of those parcels, taking the burden off of Eduardo of having to come up with, you know, almost an insurmountable task in my mind, of, you know, huge development project that encompasses a hell of a lot in a short time frame, and with a lot of risk. And I would not have, you know, the OPM type of financing contingencies. And I don't really care which, you know, which sort of venture it would be. I'd be happy to develop apartments and condos, or I'd be happy to develop, you know, an inn and hotel, you know, type of complex. I can promise you that I would put serious money into it and serious effort. And I think from my record over a couple of decades in this town, that you know that there would be success. I am not trying to undercut this gentleman in that I do appreciate that you've stepped forward. But geez, maybe we can do this together and have a better outcome, or a more assured outcome. So I sort of rest with that serious proposal to the city and Tiffin City Council.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment if I may.
Yeah, just say, Councilwoman
Comment.
Yatuno.
As my family well knows, I have quite the temper. And as I've gotten older, I've tried to control it. But I am really getting offended sitting here, listening, and he's not here any longer, but listening to the inferences and innuendo about how this isn't above board. And then Mr. Hernando can't even sit here and defend that. And they talked about he gets tax abatements. Well, so does the Frost Parkway project. They're both using it, so why insinuate that he's going after money and, you know, cutting a deal there? So I am just outraged on your behalf. I just think that's terrible that this man has come forward with a project and then it keeps being insinuated that he can't be above board with stuff, so, sorry.
Councilman Leopard.
We made a commitment to Mr. Hernando in October of 2018, and I'm here to honor that.
Mayor?
I just want to correct, kind of alluding to, I was thinking the same things, Dawn, that it really disappoints me that someone would make comments to kind of mislead the public and try to make it sound like something underhanded was going on here with it. Any property within downtown Tiffin automatically gets those same 15-year abatements that this project is getting because they're part of our historic district. So for anyone to say that we are giving, that's not exactly an accurate statement. That any property in downtown Tiffin within the district automatically gets this abatement. It was put in place, well, pre-1994 because it's called a pre-94 CRA. So it was put in place when I was in elementary school. Some of you were probably still in diapers at that time. So it does really bother me that people are trying to mislead the public and make it sound like something underhanded is going on. It's certainly not a sweetheart deal because we had the property appraised. So I really don't know what we're supposed to do in that case when you have a professional commercial appraiser come in and appraise a property, tell you what the value is, and then we look down the road one block and there's another piece of property that Tiffin City Schools has put up how many times for sale and they can't even get people to bid on it?
And it's even utility ready.
And it's utility ready, and many would argue actually much cheaper to build upon than this site because it doesn't have any of the issues right on top of Riverwall, close proximity, there's all sorts of space. So we're not giving a sweetheart deal. We're selling it for exactly what it was professionally, commercially appraised at. There's a property right down the road that has not been able to sell that is easier to build on. So those are just two things. I'm not here to get into the weeds of the argument, but when I hear misstatements or things to try to mislead the public, those are things that I have to correct because they're not accurate.
Thank you. Eduardo, you want to comment?
I'm quite embarrassed by the comments, the negative comments that were made. I think Mr. Cownow, I believe you're a billionaire or millionaire or multimillionaire. And you made a statement very clearly that you wished you spoke up sooner. The gentleman who spoke earlier, I think works for Mr. Cownow, I'm not sure, spoke in every single meeting that the council had prior to the vote. So I don't know if Mr. Cownow knew that or not, but maybe he came up on his own, but I want to be clear about the comment. There was an email sent out that was shared when the first project was announced and I started this process, written by Mr. Cownow to many prominent people in the community saying why this is a terrible idea. I referenced early on in my presentation that when David Zach so kindly shared with me the vision of Tiffin, it was a $150,000 vote or expenditure for a city like Tiffin to spend. That had to go through council review, that had to go through approvals, and everybody had to vote on. We're going to spend $150,000 for a third-party group to come in and study Tiffin and give us an entire development plan of everything in downtown and highlight lots and lots and this is where we want walkways and this is where we want. And in that report shows the lot 4 and lot 6 that I saw for the first time when I saw that report. So from the prominence of Mr. Cownow, I know he's contributed tremendously to the community. He's done fabulous things. And I will tell you that part of the empire being built and some of the other things that he has done were what triggered my additional curiosity to what's going on in Tiffin. However, for him not to know that that report was done, $150,000 were spent on it, that those lots weren't available on the riverfront, that he never spoke up, has to be a false statement. Because all this information was available to me the minute I showed up to Tiffin, coincidentally for Heidelberg. So any due diligence and the undercutting, which is actually happening, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for Tiffin, I'm embarrassed for Mr. Cownow, because everyone had an opportunity to do what I've done. I didn't come into Tiffin to do a project. I didn't come to Tiffin to take anything away from anyone. But I can guarantee you one thing. That hotel, a hotel's needed in downtown Tiffin. Another hotel's needed in Tiffin. I've been coming to Tiffin for Heidelberg, and I've been having to, go out of town to get a hotel. Okay, I've come to Heidelberg for homecomings and had to stay out of town because there's not enough hotel rooms. And since I've studied Tiffin, there's people in the communities, anytime there's an event, all the hotels are gone. So a downtown hotel is gonna bring, if you have 100 rooms, potentially, is it 50 people, is it 100 people? Okay, on any given occasion, if you're running 70% occupancy, which is a very conservative number, that's 70 people downtown to speak to the downtown businesses. Plus, you're gonna have 62 new people, if it's just one person living in the multifamily. So that's 70, that's 62, call it 50 for some occupancies there. What are the numbers, 120? Plus potentially 111 people living in a condo, that's well over 200 people. And the hotel people are gonna be in and out, so what are they gonna do? They're not gonna just stay just around the hotel and just on the riverfront. They're gonna eat on the riverfront, they're gonna go to Empire. I guess I should be a partner in your Empire when your Empire's full, because you're not losing money, then I should share that with you. Because I'm bringing people to downtown through these projects that are gonna help all the businesses downtown on historic Main Street and the riverfront. It's gonna feed everybody in the area. I don't know about you, but when I visit different places around the country for my cycling or other things that I do, I don't stay within a 10 feet radius of where I'm staying. I walk 1 block over, and I'll end up on Main Street. That's what natural human behavior is. So before I started this project, I understood the tenets of the downtown and understand the impact, the great impact this is gonna have for everyone who's there now. Everyone who's bought property downtown, what do you think is gonna happen to the real estate values? It's gonna go through the roof. It's gonna create more demand. And people are gonna wanna start new businesses and rent spaces that are empty now. So everyone's gonna benefit. But for us to be hearing today that a billionaire actually makes reference to a project that may be halfway built, I only point to you. OPM is the word, OPM, other people's money, is what I heard. When a person who's multimillionaire or billionaire owns some property across from the courthouse that's, as far as the last 4 years, has never been touched. I see a sign there for 4 years. Someone who doesn't need the money to fix it should be spending money on a property they bought that's dilapidated, sitting there, historic property or not. So again, if you're gonna throw fire, but be sure, because I'm not a guy that's gonna sit around and be attacked. Okay? So apologies for my reaction to being attacked, okay? Ms. Kears told me just last week that the gentleman who spoke before me was trying to negotiate buying her property, okay? So there's things happening and being said and being disclosed today that for some reason seem untrue. I'm not gonna call anyone or say anything else. I'll leave it up to you to make your own conclusions. But the facts are the facts. These properties were available many, many, many years before I showed up. And no one had the guts, because if you had the money, you would have done something. No one had the guts like I did to risk my own money, not other people's money, okay? Because to date, there hasn't been one other person put $1 to get me through entitlement. Nobody's seen renderings? How does the Board of Appeal approve renderings of heights and setbacks? And an architect had to be hired to do all that work, okay? So my money is the only money here at risk. And my money is the only money that's gonna be lost, and I thought was lost 6 months ago because of COVID, all right? I've never done a development before. I've been financing and developing nursing homes and assisted living my whole career. But guess what? In Hendersonville, let's address that. I did exactly what I did for Tiffin. I had a development of a condo, referencing your point. Guess how long it took to sell out 50% of that building? Less than 30 days. The reason why I'm so excited and the reason why I'm still here is because the same conditions were in that small community as exist in Tiffin. And they were the same conditions 4 years ago, okay? That's why I believe in it. And my intuition was right, and I sold it pre-sold in 30 days. But we were just on the cusp of the real estate bubble, and unfortunately, the timing ran out. The music stopped in the musical chair game. But I've been down this road before. And nobody who has never done development, as I was it was so kindly pointed out to you guys. And you have to make your own conclusion of that. Nobody who has ever done this could have possibly taken this project to where it is today. There's too many pieces and too many things that have to be done, organized and created and put in investment and managed. You're basically a quarterback, and that's what a developer is. And there's nowhere, anywhere that says a developer has to use 100% of his money, and every developer in Tiffin who's building houses or building assisted living facilities or any project in Tiffin for that matter, okay, has to be using all their own money or else you can't be a developer. It's a false statement. Every project, call it 99% of projects, okay, and even in the case of some Frost Parkway, which I think Mr. Town has invested in, ask for tax abatement. He's a billionaire. He doesn't need other people's money, but he's using other people's money. That seems odd to me. Kind of contradicts your own statements, I think, sir, respectfully. So invest in the project downtown that would help downtown, that historic, beautiful architectural building, and finish it. Okay? I put my own money in risk in this town, okay, with a lot of pride. And to this day, I can still lose it. And over the next 6 months that I'm asking for, I could still lose it. You know why? Because the economy could change. There's no guarantees of anything right now. All there is the why, because there is a possibility that it can happen. And if you're asking if it can, I ask, why not? Why not? Why can't it happen in Tiffin? Okay, 100 rooms, 60 apartments, 100 condos. It's like the Flats or somewhere else, or anywhere else. You know, it's not 500 condos, right? It's not a 300-room hotel or 500 apartments. The numbers are scaled to meet the needs that I originally thought were appropriate at 174 and a 100-room hotel. It's scaled to Tiffin's economy. It's scaled to Tiffin's ability to absorb those units. And that 440 units that he's talking about, that, oh, only 6 or 16 or 20, remember, that report's two years old. But that report also is missing information. It's missing data, because there's never been a condo like this, a high-rise situation, elevator, security, okay? There's little house condos being built, but you still gotta walk outside, drive up, pull up. It's a different animal. I had a teacher retire from, I think she's a Heidelberg graduate, she's retiring, asked me she wants to live in the apartments. She can't live downtown in the lofts, even though the lofts have waiting lists now, I think of a year or something like that, because there's no elevator. But you can live in a brand new building with an elevator. So there's things that change my project from existing, that our building won't compete with the lofts downtown. I love the lofts, the historic nature of those buildings. But you're not gonna be the same person in a rental apartment necessarily. So there's a lot of dynamics that change our project, and a lot of due diligence was put in place in the beginning. So only just to rebuttal the comments, and the comments at this stage are quite embarrassing to me. This has even happened, or the council even has to address it, but if there was concern in the beginning, that's when those concerns should have been put in front of the council. At that time, guess what? They were put in front of council. So a lot of council members today are new. You're not aware of what happened in the very beginning, but there was 3 meetings. There's 3 readings. It was open to the public. Mr. Lepper was here. So remember, there was a rebuttal. The gentleman that spoke here had a 2-page summary of why this should not happen. So everything was done at that time. And prior to me showing up, wanting to go forward with the project, there was plenty of time. And so it is definitely Monday morning quarterback, and now, it's an opportunity for me to do a project, with my money. So yes, there's gonna be debt, there's gonna be banks used, all that's been disclosed from the very beginning, and that's how this project will be developed, and the financing's in place to be there, and that's what I came today to announce with Premier, okay? And the ability to take this project, one more year out of the time we've lost in 1 year of COVID. If COVID hasn't been here, we wouldn't be having this conversation, or it would be a heck of a different conversation. I can assure you of that. Unfortunately, but fortunately, because sometimes things happen for a reason, and almost a blessing in disguise. So I'll take it as that, really more than anything. Okay? So if you have any questions that were asked of or mentioned, I'm open to answer anything if you need it or recall. But
Does anyone have any additional questions? Okay. The hour's getting late, and I think we've pretty much talked this thing through. Appreciate everybody's input. Eduardo, I appreciate your time and everything that you've invested to date. Andrew, I appreciate everything you've done for the community and what you mean to the community. Ralph, I appreciate your comments. Friendship's important. Mark, appreciate your staying on top of things, making sure that we're doing our job. So, having said all that, does anyone else have a question, comment? Anything else they want to say? Councilman Gillig.
Yeah, just very briefly, Mr. President. You know, we've discussed quite a bit. Things have gotten, a bit heated here. What do we want to do as council? Do we want to grant the extension? Like, that is pretty much the entire issue at hand. Do we want to grant the extension to see if Mr. Hernando can make progress? Councilman Leopard has asked for something to be inserted into the contract for 90 days in-person reporting. I have a lot of confidence in Mayor Montz and city administration and TSEP that they will hold Eduardo's feet to the fire, so to speak. And I think he'll do the same thing for his project. So the issue at hand is, what do we want to do next? And really, a lot of the other things that have been asked are somewhat irrelevant.
Councilman Leopard.
I think we want to propose a motion.
What's the motion?
Well, the motion is to grant the extension, but what kind of date do we want to use? We want to use February 28th, 2022, or do you want to use June 2023? Either way you go, I won't be here.
It's true.
Well, okay, Councilman Perry.
Personally, for me, I would prefer not to take action tonight and to take action next week, just to get a feel for, if any of my people in my ward have any feelings on this. I'd like to hear it out before we just were to act tonight. That's just how I would feel about it, but obviously, I'm only one voice, so.
Law Director.
Procedurally, you have to speak ultimately by ordinance. So if you have a motion is something that you might direct legislation to be prepared, and you might have some parameters with that. Although, we've talked about a lot of different things, and maybe that needs to be developed a little bit more. But you have to have an ordinance that would be introduced and read at 3 meetings. This is only the beginning of whatever decision you choose to make.
Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I'll direct this to the law director. We need to have action taken prior to June 30th.
Well,
so special meetings for additional readings?
I would say so, because the current agreement arguably would expire by the end of the month. So if you are interested in extending it upon some terms, you need to take action this month. Otherwise, there will be a lapse, an expiration of that existing agreement.
Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would so move that we ask the law director to prepare legislation extending the contract for the sale of 2 said properties, and with a expiration date of June 30th, 2022.
With the amended in there in the 90 days?
Correct, and also to be included in the agreement will be that city council requires in-person reporting every 90 days.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Second, Mr. President.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilman Perry.
Just one question. Say for some reason he doesn't fulfill the 90 days, what would be, I don't know, a consequence or action then?
Well, you could say that the agreement is null and void.
Yeah.
You know, that would be the ultimate.
Yeah.
And there are, I know you mentioned June 30th, 2022, but there are different steps that Eduardo has presented to you, that things that will have to happen. And you may want to consider having those kind of things fall into place by deadlines, and it can be appropriate to what has been presented. So they're reasonable. And it may be appropriate to protect the city's interest to have that included in this additional time, such as there are two different proposed purposes of these two properties. They could be on different tracks, as we've talked, both in terms of loan commitment letters that could be provided to the city, because that'll necessarily have to happen. And if it doesn't happen at a reasonable time, then maybe the agreement could be null and void. Hearing other things that was presented, closing should take place then at some point thereafter. Agreement could be null and void if it doesn't happen. Commencing construction, again, is another moment in time that could be defined. Completion of construction with certain post-closing obligations like we have included in the agreement. So we can frame this, I believe, based on what I've heard from Eduardo and council's comments, to make this work hopefully for everyone, especially the public, the taxpayers, who are the owners of this property right now. I mean, this is different than private property where there's a private development. You own the property, and that's why we're all talking here today. This is kind of a unique circumstance. So the type of things that we're talking about in terms of deadlines would seem to be reasonable and appropriate given the discussion.
Councilman Gillig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would it be possible to make a motion for an extension of the current contract as it is, just so we'd have a bit more time to explore some of these potential addendums that you're discussing?
I suppose you could do anything, but I think now is the moment that is important for the developer who has made investments in the community, who needs to understand what the terms going forward. And you have taxpayers that want to know what's going on with this project. It's taken quite a while, so I'm sure there's mention all around the room of frustration with the timing. And that's sometimes external issues that none of us can control. So I don't know if additional time is going to really allow for the development of the project that you may want. You still just have to deal with these issues, and I think deal with them now.
Mayor?
Ben, I don't know, would council be willing to entertain the idea of kind of giving us that final date and then allowing myself and Brent to come up with some
I was just going to suggest.
earlier
I was just gonna
milestones
suggest that.
of points to hit? So
Yeah.
that way you all don't have to hold 10 more meetings to decide these milestones. You guys tell us the end date and we can come up with some additional sooner milestones that must be hit based off of the deadlines that Mr. Hernando provided us. That way we're not back here for another 10 meetings before the end of July, and we can present it to you either at the next council meeting, or if we have it ready, try to email something out even sooner.
Sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
Yep.
Well, and if I can help in that, if that's what you want, based on some notes that I
That's
heard
what I
about
want.
construction.
You better help me.
Well, based on notes I took regarding construction, Lot 6 in the hotel could be the end date of construction. We hope that the doors are open June 30th, 2023. And then the condo, though, would be more like September 30th, 2024, if you're talking about end dates. I'm just trying to come up with,
Make a comment?
it's up to the president.
Yes, go ahead.
So, the end date is a trigger if we haven't broken ground, then potentially the city could buy back that land so that something could be built.
That's the end date is completion of construction. There would be a earlier commence construction date is.
The key is the commencement, when we break ground. I mean, once we break ground and start building something, how's the city gonna buy back a hotel that's, if we're missing that date, you have to come back to the council and say, hey, guess what, I need another month before we get our CO. So really, the key is the commencement date, once we close and once we break ground. That's the key. Once we break ground, the project's obviously fulfilled, we've got construction money, we've got it financed, everything's done, and it's gonna get finished between 1 year or 8 months. But, there's a window of time of commencement now that, okay, guess what? Whether it's labor or whether it's materials, whether it's something, once we break ground and we start constructing, there's could be construction delays in general, but not, okay, hey, we're gonna take back we're gonna buy back the land for $147,000 because he didn't finish the project.
Well, but the current agreement has a couple post-closing obligations on it, which is commence construction, and if you don't, then the city could purchase the property back.
That's the key.
Or the price of the sale. However, we also have an additional obligation is that if it's not completed by a particular date, and that's what we're talking about this date, then the agreement does say that the city or a party that we assign the agreement to could purchase that property at an appraised value at that time of what the property is worth. And the appraised value, I believe, is determined or paid for the appraisal at a cost of the developer. So, and I think that tries to the issue that Councilman Perry raised, that if it doesn't get done, what happens? We have at least a recourse, the city, that we could come and say you didn't do it for whatever reason. We could then purchase the property or assign it to a party to purchase it at appraised value. That's in the agreement right now.
Right, which we agreed to.
Right, exactly. And so that same concept we would put into the new agreement, just extending the date out is what we were talking about.
I guess we have to, pardon my interruption, we didn't ever cover that, the back end date, so we can address that if you like, it's, after the meeting or something.
Well, I just threw out the dates based on what your presentation, that it would take a year from the start of construction for the hotel project, and it would take 18 months from the start of the condo project. Or longer, that's what I was, just like we did, and I think that's even more generous time than when the original contract was was signed, because we had 1 year from the date of start. And
Do you need language right now, today, to finalize these details, or are we gonna go back to, like the mayor, which was my expectation, that we would have time to go through the detail of that?
If council sets the parameters of these end dates, which is what I was trying to give you some language of dates, then I can work back the other dates that I had explained in an addendum, and you can have that for your next Monday's meeting, and maybe I can even try to get it to you before then. You cannot discuss at a public meeting amongst you, but you can at least have it to start talking to constituents or doing your own investigation, so.
Okay, everybody understand? Is that acceptable? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? I'll ask for the clerk to call the vote.
Councilwoman Boyle.
Yes.
Councilman Gillig.
Yes.
Councilwoman Yanatuno.
Yes.
Councilman Jones.
Yes.
Councilman Leopard.
Yes.
Councilman Perkins.
Yes.
And Councilman Perry.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. That's the end of your report.
It's the first time I've ever left and come back. I have never in my life left a meeting mid-report, come back.
All right. We're still on the reports of the officers. Does Clerk Counsel Ann Forrest have a report?
No report, Mr. President.
Okay, Kathy's not here. Director of Law, Brent T. Howard, you have a report?
I think I'll have to report in the future. It sounds like I've got my work cut out for me. No report.
All right. Any written communications?
No, there are no written communications.
Okay, we're now under oral communications. Anybody from the attending public who wishes to address council can step forward. Okay, seeing none. Any motions?
No motions, Mr.
Okay.
President.
No resolutions, ordinances, okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Huh? What's so
No.
funny?
Nothing.
I don't like it when people laugh
Longest mayor report
at
I've
me.
ever had.
What's that?
Mayor's setting records.
Councilman Gillig.
Just very briefly, if you are available, it would certainly be an honor to have any of you and your families join us for the Juneteenth celebration at the East Green Amphitheater, 7 PM on Saturday. If you are available, we would certainly love to have you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. God bless all of you. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. We're adjourned.